Welcome, Shia Ben-Ephraim. We did an interview yesterday. This is gonna be the first thing that people see. The interview is pretty contentious. We call each other names. Um, you did a nice tweet about it already. I appreciate the spirit. I watched it yesterday, and I asked you if we could have a quick Zoom before I edit the whole thing together because there's one section there where we're arguing very harshly about Christoph's use of your tweet. And I understand now more what you were trying to say that I didn't pick up on when you were arguing it. And then there's something also that I was had in my head that I didn't well express. So what I understand now better was that you were trying to say to me that this list of the dog rape examples in your tweet are examples that you are just essentially cataloging, and that your final paragraph about I know this happens. I spoke to a guard who heard about it. And I spoke to a guard who saw it. This happens. You're saying you were not referring. It was kind of like maybe it wasn't written properly, but what you meant was like this is the catalog, and then I just want to let you know, independently of all that, I have my own source of information about this, which does not pertain to any of this. When you say this happens, you didn't mean this, the list above you. You meant this thing.
Exactly. And I think that's very important
Okay.
in how my involvement in this article has been treated. Um, I think that Nick saw that tweet and dug in on some of the sources I provided. He also tried to contact the guards that I talked to unsuccessfully.
Uh-huh.
So, what he's referring to in his article is only the things that I'm compiling. In fact, I didn't bring any new information at all to that article. Um, so my involvement is actually quite incidental. I was very surprised to be, linked in there. I wasn't mentioned, but to be linked.
Right.
And I was very surprised at the amount of backlash I received and attention I received. In
Right.
retrospect, I understand that that's just a way to discredit the article. But my involvement in the article is almost non-existent.
All
So
right.
yeah,
So let me.
that's what I was trying to say.
So actually, we are converging on something here, and let me tell you why
And
I.
I believe the article fully and support it. It's just that it's not my article.
Right, but let me tell you why and why I reacted that way to the tweet, and why I still think the bulk of my point is to be reckoned with, because I was aware also, as you say, not only did your tweet not bring, and I'll put the tweet up in video, not only did your tweet not bring any new information to the article, but that everything in your tweet was actually already spoken about in the other sources that he footnoted to. I even, yesterday, I don't know if you heard me. I said, "Can you give me the sentence that Christoph uh, linked to Shael's tweet on?" And then I couldn't get it because that's what the point I wanted to make, and then it went by me. So, but then today, even just now before I spoke to you, actually, I could probably share my screen. I uploaded all the sources from Christoph's article to ChatGPT in the Pro engine, and I asked it to double check for me. Were all the things that you mentioned already mentioned in Christoph's um, sources? And let's see if I can do this. If you want to see it, you see that? You see the ChatGPT screen?
Yes, now I do.
Yeah, it says within the uploaded, and I uploaded. There's the Euromed report. There's a transcript of a YouTube video. There's a Channel 4 interview. There's an article from a BBC. I don't remember all the things. There's like five different things he links to. Within the uploaded materials, Shael's unique contribution is not the victim story list. It is the guard corroboration claim at the end of the tweet. He says he personally spoke to ChatGPT picked up on this right away. He personally spoke to two guards of Shtei Teman, and then it tells what I just said. That is the thing none of the other uploaded sources appear to say. And not only does that, but your tweet doesn't even link to the sources. So as a basis to link to, he's just, if you want to take out your bottom paragraph, which I focused on, he couldn't even link to your tweet because he is not even it's not even anything that has a footnote to other things. You're just some guy saying five things that happened. You don't say where you got them from. No, yeah. So,
I think I do. I think I say Euromed, whatever, but
some you do, some you might,
not.
but some you don't.
Yeah.
I'm not, but they're all legit. I mean, they're all from somewhere. One of them I would quibble about the way you put it, but that's really not my purpose here today. We could talk about that offline. And I'm not accusing you of doing it intentionally. Um, the point is that he wanted, I believe, I think this is the only way to look at it, because he asked you for the guards. He couldn't get you for the guards. I'm sure that conversation was extensive, and maybe you want to tell us about that. But he wanted to smuggle into the article, in my opinion, exactly what I said in the interview that I'm about to play, which is he wanted the testimony against interest. He wanted the report of someone who heard it from Israelis. And that's why it becomes so significant that though your tweet says it happened, meaning the penetration of humans by dogs, in the end, it turns out that you knew that the penetration didn't happen, at least from the guard that
I
told you
didn't
that.
have confirmation from the guards that it happened. That's not the same as me knowing that
No,
it didn't happen.
yes, no, yes. In the interview, you said it didn't happen. You said that the guards there was no penetration. No, maybe misspoke.
No, in the case that that specific guard saw it. No, I don't want to
Yeah, yes,
generalize as to what happens. I firmly believe that it did happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Not in the case that that particular guard saw.
yes,
That I want to be very clear on what I'm saying.
right.
You
So,
can
so
disagree,
my
but
point.
that's not. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I never said that it didn't happen. In fact, since
No, I
there's
didn't. I
testimony
said, I'm
from,
being specific to that. So to be charitable to you, I'm gonna be, I don't mean charitable in a snide way. I mean, like, just to give you the benefit of the doubt. The tweet was written in a not the most careful way because you had no idea that the world was going to be reading it to you.
I thought it would get
He,
100 likes. Like I had no idea we'd
I
be
don't know what
analyzing
went,
this.
I don't know what went on with you in that conversation between you and the guard. Nobody forced you, or maybe the guard did, to clarify that you didn't, that guard says there was no penetration, but you certainly understand how people read the tweet and thought you were saying that the guard said there was penetration because you said it happened. Somebody told me he saw it.
Well, it could be
And
interpreted that way. That's one of the
yeah,
reasons when I went on Pierce
yeah,
Morgan, I clarified it because
yeah,
between the tweet and Pierce Morgan, that specific element had become so controversial and had been
right.
spoken about so much, I decided I would clarify it as much as possible. And I don't regret it. I want to be as clear and transparent about what I know and what I don't know. So I don't regret it
Yes.
at all. I guess I could have worded the tweet better, but I didn't expect to be sitting here, testifying about the tweet all this time later. But you're
Although I'm
right. It
screaming,
could have been written more carefully, but I never
yeah,
contradicted myself fully.
yeah,
And I do believe that it happened, but not, it wasn't confirmed to me specifically by
yes.
the guard who saw it.
Although I've been yelling and screaming at you, it's Kristof here that makes my blood boil because everything that I'm inquiring with you and uncovering with you and commenting on with you, this was his obligation as a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist to nail down from you, did this journalist see the penetration? And you don't think that's his requirement. I think it's
I
because
disagree. Not
well, let me
if
just finish
if
my
it,
point. I'm almost finished.
go
And the
ahead.
reason I
Go ahead.
say it's his requirement because since the other or the six or seven incidents that you list, whatever number there were, are all already contained in the sources he already linked to. Let me just for the readers. He says other Palestinian prisoners and human rights monitors have also cited reports of police dogs being coached to rape prisoners. And each one of those words is a link, basically. And you're one of the other Palestinian prisoners and human rights monitors have also cited reports. So I guess you're a human rights monitor of police dogs. But understand, have also cited reports. Well, you were just cataloging reports of those other human rights things. The only thing that you brought to the table was this claim of that the soldiers had said so. And if that is, which since that could be the only purpose for Kristof including your tweet, since you're just repeating other first primary source information, then that he had an obligation to cross-examine you and interrogate you about that bit of information, which could be the only information he if you hadn't put those two paragraphs at the end about your conversation with the soldiers, he would have never cited your tweet.
No, I don't know that.
Why would
that's
he? How
but
could
that's not.
your tweet doesn't even have footnotes? How could he cite your tweet? He couldn't.
I was very surprised that he did. So you would have
Right,
to ask him
yes.
why he cited the tweet.
No, I'm
But
saying
I think
as a
he
journalistic
did.
matter, he couldn't even cite your tweet because
He
it's
did.
not a source.
It's not much of a source.
Yes,
It's a tweet.
but your talk with the guards is a source.
My talk with the guards is a source. Now,
Yes.
Kristof, in my opinion, did his due diligence. He approached me. He said, "Could you put me in touch with these guards?" I tried unsuccessfully. And so he could not confirm that conversation, and therefore it didn't appear directly in the story. Cross-examining me on something that he couldn't confirm would serve absolutely no purpose. He didn't include
Yes.
it in the story. And I think there's way too much attention here put to the fact that he linked to a tweet of mine that he felt was
Okay.
interesting and illustrative. He didn't back the authenticity of the tweet or of the testimony there directly. I just think you're
Shael,
expecting
I
far too
okay,
much here.
but can't you grant me,
If he had cited the guards, he would have had to do everything that you said, but he didn't.
Shael? I get what you're saying, but can't you grant me this much, that since the tweet is most likely read to be a confirmation of the penetration by dogs, I saw it, I know this happened, and he spoke to you and surely asked you for details about those conversations.
No, he didn't
And
ask me for
I
details at
don't know,
all
he
because he
must have,
wanted to talk directly to the guards.
right, but when you
He did not
told him
ask
he
me for any
couldn't,
details. I didn't
when you
offer any
told him
details.
he never asked, so he said when you that's interesting. When you said I can't get them to talk to you, he said, "Well, can you go over
That
what?"
was the
He
end of
didn't
the
say what.
conversation.
He
He
didn't ask you. Can
decided,
you? He didn't ask you to detail what they
nope,
told you. Well, isn't that exactly what I'm saying? Like,
nope.
shouldn't he have done that before he just retweets you or cites you?
No, because he can't because as a responsible journalist, he can't use it without confirming the sources.
But he did
I
use it. But he did use it.
very indirectly, very
No, it's the
indirect.
only bit of information that your tweet provides to that story that is not covered by the
Well,
people who
you would
uncovered.
have to ask him. You would have to ask him why he added it. I stand behind what I
Okay,
wrote.
okay,
I mean, not
okay.
necessarily the phrasing. You raised a good point about the phrasing, but I stand
Uh,
behind the general content of what I wrote. I think Kristof did his due diligence. Because people oppose this article so much, they're looking for any little angle, and it's actually
no,
standing up quite well. I think to all these
yeah,
attacks,
yeah.
and we're
Listen,
seeing more incidents as we speak of Israelis doing the same thing to flotilla activists, only not with dogs as far as we know, but only proving the spirit of sadism and
no,
torture that these guards perform every day.
yeah. I'm going to
That's much more
stipulate.
important than these little inconsistencies that
No, no,
all of the
no,
Zionist voices are
no. I
focusing
don't.
on in order to try to discredit something that is very clearly true.
I don't agree completely with you. I do
I know you
agree
don't.
that the voices out there who want to reject out of hand the very notion that Israelis could be sadistically treating prisoners, let alone prisoners they believe who were involved in October 7th. How could you say such a thing? This is not to their credit. And my opinion has always been from the minute I read it that certainly some of this has to be true. And I'll confess more that I spoke to some Israelis, not only who believe that much of it is true, but who also have heard stories about dogs being used to terrorize people in prisons. And yet, although you may see it the same way, most people also feel like that is all wrong and awful and of a piece with what goes on in similar types of prisons. Unfortunately, that's not an excuse, but the idea of training dogs to penetrate people on demand is something out of a dystopian novel. And the fact that claim is your position seems to be, well, if that's just a little detail, if it's not true, so what, the story still stands. And I'm sorry, but many of us feel that little detail, if it's true, tells us that as much as we believed certain things were possible, that the sky is the limit.
I mean, we have
that
historical
yeah,
cases of this happening. I'm not really 100% sure why people find this to be so
not in Israel,
unbelievable.
not in Israel.
Now we do, right? We had in Chile, we had in
Well,
Nazi
The
Germany.
Chile one actually I've been reading is that there's actually the penetration was not claimed there. That there's kind of like there's always like a left wing overlay of like what is assault, what is this, what is that. Someone told me I haven't looked into Chile, but there is a claim of an Egyptian prison. Lawrence Wright did claim that.
Yep, Egypt.
Yeah. So that's and
And
that's
it's
Lawrence Wright.
possible if you use spray, which you yourself in the interview, and I give
Yes,
you a lot of
yes,
credit for this,
possible.
showed
Yes.
testimony of a Palestinian inmate saying that they sprayed
Listen,
something
listen.
on him. I think that in some cases,
Yeah. Listen,
I
but
get
even no, no, but
this has happened,
even the spray could be
not
also
necessarily
could be
routinely.
part. Even the spray could be part of a terrorizing. I mean, get the dog over there, sniff him, menace him, as opposed to what is much. And the second expert that will also be showing up here pointed out that as the actual, I don't want to talk about it graphically, but it's quite challenging. He said to imagine that even a dog in that state, even the dog with that worked up in that way, to make that happen would require all sorts of intervention and would be, listen, every day people are tried for things that are possible and they didn't do it. Maybe to a fault, I looked into the possibility of it because that's just my instinct. Whenever it says it's impossible, I said, well, is it impossible? I don't want to start saying in interviews to people it's impossible unless I know it's impossible. And then I found some inconvenient information, and my sense of honor said, you know what? Like when Tucker Carlson cut out Kanye West's rants about the anti-Semitic rants in that interview years ago, and we found out after the fact that he massaged it so it wouldn't look quite as bad for her. I don't want to be that guy. So I'm like, I found this out. I'm gonna say it, but people should not misinterpret it to me thinking it happened. I just think that the people who said it's impossible are being sloppy, and I do not want to be part of that group. But I don't think it's and as I've spoken to Israelis who are inclined to believe many of the stories, who are like, but this penetration story, they're like, come on, like, no, of course not. They can't even process it, even among the things that they know. So I think it's very, very, very
I think
unlikely. But anyway,
ultimately we need to have a
yeah,
good, transparent
of course,
investigation into the
of course,
practices of how prisoners are.
of
What
course.
this article did is it raised a lot of questions and allegations of horrible things occurring to prisoners, which most honest readers agree that the vast majority of it almost definitely happened, and the
Yes,
rest can be investigated. And that's what's really
as a shaking of the tree, you never know. It could come out. They shake the tree, and Israel is able to redeem themselves. But I just want to make the point that this is my editorial content here. That I think we know exactly what Kristof did. He asked you about those guards. He couldn't speak to them. He wanted to introduce it into his story. So he put you into a list. The entire tweet is redundant to the story, except for those two paragraphs. And he didn't even try to get details from you to find out, well, what did they say exactly? Did they say penetration? Are you, how do you feel about it? That to me, all I can tell you is this. If I was doing a story or a podcast and my listeners know this, of course I would have asked those questions. And I'm not part of the New York Times. Of course I would have said, all right, they won't talk to me, but can you just go over for me what exactly they said? And then I would question you on it and say, well, how do you feel about it? Do you believe it? How sure are you that they were telling the truth? What was your vibe?
I have to say that I've had just about every publication you can imagine call me this week,
Yeah.
around the world. Probably about 30, 40 journalists from the best publications have called me.
Yeah.
And they all did the same thing. They all wanted to talk to the guards.
Yeah.
None of them wanted to hear my editorializing.
Well,
None
they're
of
all
them
second
wanted to
rate.
hear my opinions. They wanted to talk to the guards. And that is exactly the right approach. No one asked me about what they told me. No one asked me about how I felt about it. Not a single one of them did. Some of them asked
It's
me more
absurd.
questions
It's
than Nick did.
absurd.
No, but they don't see me as a direct source, and correctly so. They wanted to use
But then
me
they should.
to
You're
get
right.
to the direct source.
But then he had no business
Still did.
running it. That's my point. If he doesn't see you
Well,
as a source, he had no business. He had no business putting your tweet in. And if he and if he wants to say, well, no, I didn't put the tweet in for that. I put the tweet in for the other five things. I say, what are you talking about? The other five things are in your other sources.
Well, you'd have to
He,
take that
he's
up
he's
with
just
him. I
repeating.
don't think that
He
he
just
fully
repeated
endorsed
was
my
yeah. Okay,
tweet.
okay.
He
I think you
probably
understand my
believes
logic.
it. He
Yeah.
probably
Okay.
believes it, but he didn't fully endorse it. So I don't know if I really buy
It
what you're
had it
saying, but
had it
it's
had
a
no business
plausible
in this.
point. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's okay. I'll take it. All right. Is there anything else you want to say? And then I'm going to cut this into I'm going to cut the interviews. My whole package here is too long. I'll cut things down, but everything will be available
Yeah,
for
I'll
people.
just say
Yeah.
before you show the full interview that some things were
Yeah.
said in the heat of the moment that I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Noam's a good guy. He has a contentious form of arguing that's very familiar to me as an Israeli. Doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
bring out the best in me, but it was a very interesting conversation, and yeah, I hold no ill will towards Noam, and don't stand behind everything I said about him or to him, but I stand behind all my opinions
Yeah. Okay.
and my principles as I express them in this interview.
All right. I'm going to press stop, but don't hang up because I want to say something to you secretly.
Okay, then I'm going to record now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Live from the Table. I like that. My name is Noam Dwarman. I'm the owner of the Comedy Cellar. I'm here today only right now with Periel Ashenbrand.
Only?
I mean, there's no one else here. Periel is under the weather today. She's suffering from the cuntavirus. but she's gonna do her best. Anyway, okay, you can cut the music, Steve. Okay. Actually, no. Let it play. Did you cut? This is the best part. Right here. All right. So we have later on coming Shael Ben-Ephraim. Say it with a Hebrew accent.
Shael Ben-Ephraim.
Okay, yeah. And he is one of the main sources for Nick Kristof's story about the Israeli prison abuse of the Palestinians. So before he comes, I want to talk about this because I've already really, really upset. I know I have people who like me and who feel that I should shut up, because I've said certain things that went against the grain on this whole story. So I just want to kind of do a little disclaimer at the top or explanation at the top. So first of all, my cause, as it were, I wrote some bullet points here for myself, but my cause, as it were, Periel, is to remove the asterisk next to Israel in the list of nations. That Israel exists, it is not on probation, it can't get expelled for bad behavior, that it is an ordinary nation that is capable of things it should be ashamed of and things that it can be proud of. It is susceptible to the same feedback loops that every open society responds to. America vacillated from Jim Crow to the civil rights movement to, we had homeless people being abused in mental institutions, and then we have put them all out. The pendulum swings the other way, and we try to adjust. And as I said, Israel is an ordinary nation, and it needs to be viewed that way. And in my opinion, nothing it does or doesn't do is an argument that it should not exist. That is my cause. And if this story is true, if this story is not true, that argument is untouched. In the same way that if we were to find, and I think it's unlikely that we wouldn't find, that Nazi prisoners of war or Japanese prisoners of war, especially the Japanese probably, were horribly abused in camps by the American soldiers, the American guards, it wouldn't for 1 second shake me in my conviction that America's cause was right and just in those wars. And that's it. So, having said that, I want to handle
the Kristof article in an objective way. And by the way, I learned something very, very interesting. I was having lunch with my friend Max Raskin. You know Max Raskin? All the Jews know Max Raskin. And he told me something. You know Max Raskin? You don't know Max Raskin? Anyway, and he told me something very interesting. I took a note here. Did you know that in the Babylonian Talmud, the Sanhedrin, 17a, whatever that means, if Sanhedrin is like the Jewish court, I don't know. Is it just Jewish court? You don't know. We're the Jews are the worst, right? We know nothing.
Well, I mean, it's sort of, really specific.
Anyway, man, we've all heard of the Sanhedrin. Anyway, if a Sanhedrin is trying a capital case, meaning a death penalty case, and in the initial canvassing, they find that unanimously that the defendant is guilty, the defendant is acquitted. Do you know why? Can you guess why? It's a psychological insight. Jewish law requires deep deliberation and for the judges to search for arguments in favor of acquittal, to be fair. But if in the initial canvassing every judge votes guilty, then no one is occupying the necessary role of the defender. So the process itself is considered defective. And I have a quote here. Maimonides codifies it in the blah, 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 blah. When all judges in a capital case begin by saying the defendant is liable, he is exonerated. There must be at least some judges arguing for acquittal, even if the majority ultimately convicts. And I heard this after the fact, but this, I think, is a reflex that I often have. The second this Kristof article came out, before anyone could have possibly taken the time to really understand what was true and what wasn't true, what was possible and what was impossible. You're saying the dog rape thing, it's common sense that it's not true. It's physiologically impossible. It can't be true, meaning like, I couldn't have killed that person. I was on a Carnival cruise in Tahiti. So, and here's the evidence. So what more do you need to know than that? Like, you don't even need to inquire anymore as to whether or not I did it because, I wasn't in the country that day. We don't need to inquire any deeper about this dog rape charge because it's simply not possible. You might as well have said they went back in time. Why would we bother looking into that, right? This always rubs me the wrong way. I can't help it. And although, you examine your motives, and if you have mixed motives as a person, as we all do and don't want to admit to, it's like a thicket. So, of course, there is part of me which wants to be right where all my peers were wrong. I can't lie about that. And I'm on the lookout for like the bridge over the River Kwai syndrome. You know what that is?
What?
In the movie The Bridge over the River Kwai, I think it's Alec Guinness or something. It's the Allied in the prison camp. They're put to work to build this bridge the bridge for the Japanese, and they get so caught up in it in an ego way that they end up fighting to get this bridge built, even though it needs to be bombed in order for their own people to come and defeat the Japanese. So, I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I hope I'm getting it basically right. But the point is that you can get so caught up in something that you become a collaborator. And not every true fact needs to be trumpeted. And even in courts of law, we have the notion that facts can be prejudicial. So, and, we also have the concept, like, every beleaguered group has it and family has it, not in front of the goyim. Like, you don't talk, we don't air our dirty laundry in public. But, so I'm like, should I be talking about this? Is this ego? Is it this? Is it that? But in the end, I don't think that's right because, first of all, there's no way for me to discuss it if I'm going to lie and pretend. Like, I can't inhabit that. This is impossible. It couldn't have happened because I don't believe it, right? Number one. Number two, as I've said a couple of years ago, if you don't go after the truth is going to come after you. And this is too easily researched and figured out to bury it, to sweep it under the rug. And number three, I don't think, first of all, I don't think it happened, but I don't think it needs to be impossible, nor do I think the idea of a rogue guard or rogue guards doing something awful is something that Israel, or we defenders of Israel, had to pretend is just not possible. It is possible. Oh, and the other danger of getting this wrong, it becomes like what happened during COVID and various other things, when I believe the more reasonable people on COVID maybe fibbed about certain things, fibbed about masks, fibbed about the vaccine in certain ways, fibbed that they had science for 6 feet, whatever it is that they fibbed about, or pretended that they knew they didn't really know. People like Tucker Carlson, they took this and they ran with it. That once you can attach to somebody some things that are not true, then you can gain a false credibility with people who then want to follow you. They say, well, he was right about these things. I presume he's right about everything. As a matter of fact, I think I heard Norman Finkelstein, of all people, say something similar to this. I didn't take it from him, but I guess along the same line. So that always worries me. We have to get this right, otherwise it will backfire. We interviewed a dog expert a couple of days ago. We're going to put his interview in later. We're interviewing another one later today. But maybe I'll start with this. Let's just get the dog thing out of the way. You want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say something. I mean, first of all, I've also been getting a lot of shit, and
for me,
yeah,
of course.
But I've said from the beginning that I am conflicted about this, because to me, there's this, and I'll be very clear, and I say this every time, and I'll say it again. If it, God forbid, happened, it's horrific and it should be dealt with, and that to me, that's like goes without saying.
Right.
But there is this thing about, and I said this last show also, are we contributing to the people who already hate us? Every time somebody says something insane, are we supposed to just go running and turn our pockets inside out? Are we just adding fuel to this fire by giving this so much time and attention?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I would think that if there's any kind of accusation that's credible, we need to look into it. But that's really a different matter than what I'm saying. It's I'm just not going to get out there and say something that is impossible.
No, I don't think you should. I know that's not what you're saying. Yeah. I'm saying something separate from what you're saying. I mean, there are accusations that we drink the blood of Christian babies also, right? That we have control the weather, space lasers. Are we just giving credence to these insane things? Every time somebody says something about the Jews, we're no.
There's serious problems with the article, both on Kristof's part and Shiloh's part and Euromed's part. It's full of holes. It's Stephen. Yeah. Can you cue up the one that says right Egyptian, WRIGHT, right Egyptian torture? So this is from Lawrence Wright, who wrote the book. That's not it. Who wrote the book, The Looming Tower, which is considered the classic on description of Al Qaeda. He is lauded by all the pro-Israel types. He's a very, very thorough journalist. I emailed him. He still stands by this. This is what he had to say in 2010. Can you play it, Stephen? He was describing Egypt there. Go ahead.
There's one thing that wasn't really, I think, voiced as an idea, but the torture that they endured, in my opinion, is what really gave them an appetite for revenge. And the bloodletting that is so characteristic of Al-Qaeda, and really is very unusual for terror groups which are mainly interested in theater, I think it was born in the humiliation that those men felt in those Egyptian prisons.
What kind of torture?
Well, there's, the basic torture, which was simply that you would be handcuffed with your hands behind your back, and then your wrists suspended from a door jamb, and you're left there to hang on the door for hours and hours. Some of the guys I talked to still couldn't shave, and couldn't bring their hands together very easily, and that was really common. Some of the other torture was, with dogs. And one of my FBI sources said that he had talked to an Egyptian intelligence officer who said that they used the dogs to rape the prisoners. It would be hard to tell you how humiliating it would be to any person, but especially in Islamic culture where dogs are such a lowly form of life. It's that imprint will never leave anybody's mind.
All right, so there's a guy, a very credible journalist. He wrote in the New Yorker, and he stands by it. So he thinks, this was out there, right? People listened to this, and nobody at the time said, that's ridiculous. It's impossible. Turn in your card, Lawrence, right? Because it's impossible. Now, that doesn't make it possible. It could be that, it wasn't such a hot issue then. Everybody just went past it. Nobody really considered it, whatever it is. Nevertheless, a sober, careful journalist, that was his answer. He staked a kind of whole historical trend on this and other facts like it, right? So, this unanimity, and, it just reminds me, actually, I think I have the video too, the Malcolm Gladwell thing. With this unanimity comes tremendous social pressure, right? You are not supposed to bucket. Now, how many times have we seen social pressure blow up in the faces of the people who went blindly, who blindly succumbed to it? How about the trans issue? Do you remember the trans issue? When everybody, including you, I say, you can't have trans women playing. Actually, when we first started talking about it, I'm like, you're going to have a trans woman boxing and is going to kick the shit out of her. And you're like, that would never happen. And I said, yes. And we were just kidding at the time because it seemed so ridiculous. But then when it did happen, it's like, no, that's fine. There's no evidence that. And everybody was scared shitless to say what they were thinking. So play this. And then here's this beautiful acknowledgement of it by Malcolm Gladwell. You have that one, Steve? So this is Malcolm Gladwell saying. Now I tell you, like I'm a student is an exaggeration, but I find this stuff delicious, and I think that these examples are the tippy tip of huge icebergs. When you get an acknowledgement like this, it's like when I find something that happens in my business and I find it by chance, I always tell Liz, if you found it, it's happening 100 other times you never know about, right? If Malcolm Gladwell, an iconoclast, a guy who speaks hard truths, if he is admitting to this, the sky's the limit as to how many other people were feeling the same way. Go ahead, play it.
If we did a replay of that exact panel at the Sloan Conference this coming March.
It was a panel discussing
if
trans.
we did a replay of that exact panel at the Sloan Conference this coming March, it runs in exactly the opposite direction. I suspect near unanimity in the room that trans athletes have no place in the female category. I don't think there's any question. I just think it was a strange. The reason I'm ashamed of my performance at that panel because I share your position 100%, and I was cowed. The idea of saying anything on this issue, I was I believe in retrospect, in a dishonest way. I was objective in a dishonest way.
So there you have it.
You love that, huh?
Of course. I love it because it's what I always felt. I always said everybody's full of shit. Everybody's lying, right? And now I'm not saying that the people who claim that it's impossible as much as it's not deeply considered, are lying. I'm not saying they believe that it is possible they're lying. I'm saying that by everybody saying certain things are impossible, certain things didn't happen, we would never do such things. They create a tremendous social pressure that leads other people to lie. Now, Ehud Olmert got in trouble because, well, actually, no, I didn't find this compelling. He said in the Kristof article, do I have it here? Maybe, Kristof says, I didn't know what to make of all these. Kristof lists all the accusations of all the atrocities. He says, I didn't know what to make of all this. So I asked former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, and he said, well, I don't know much about the abuse in prisons, but I would assume, or I definitely believe that things like this happen. Now, when I read that in Kristof's column, I didn't take it to mean that Olmert was co-signing any particular accusation. I actually took it to mean the opposite. But then Olmert issued a statement like, I'm not verifying anything. And then people took that, like this guy, Roy Altman, wrote for the Free Press. He wrote like such a flimsy column, and I'd like to have him on. So, but
well, maybe you should edit that out then.
No, but no, with a guy like that, maybe he'll want to. But one of the things he says, like, and he asked Olmert, but Olmert was convicted of bribery in Israel, which for a lawyer like this is not. That's an impeachment of his credibility, but not an impeachment of what happened. And Olmert was the prime minister. He knows and is connected, and he knows what nobody talks about. He knows what he has an instinct as to what he has an instinct as to what could and couldn't happen.
Our guest is here.
Yeah, okay. And when they asked him, here's he says, as Kristof framed it, Olmert told him he didn't know much about sexual violence against Palestinians, but was not surprised by the accounts. Olmert was quoted saying, do you believe it happened? Definitely. There are war crimes committed every day in the territories. Okay. But he was the prime minister of Israel. And he has served. And he has a sense for what is and isn't possible. And what Olmert didn't say is, no, that would never happen. I can. If it happened, it would shock me. Like when we asked Ami Ayalon, former head of the Shin Bet, about Hannibal and whether Israel would actually shoot its own people, he's like, no, of course not. Like he was stunned by even that anybody would claim such a thing. Olmert clearly wasn't stunned, but Altman, as trying to rehabilitate Israel, just brings up his bribery charge and his other things in there as well. You like saying that
he's trying to discredit him.
He discredited him. This is the whole thing. So anyway, that's where I am.
So who's mad at you?
I can't say. You want to introduce Shael?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, sir.
Hi there. How's it going?
Okay. Pearl's going to give you your introduction.
It's Shael, right? I'm saying that correctly?
Shael.
Shael. Okay.
Shael.
Shael Ben-Ephraim is a geopolitical analyst for Atlas Global Strategies. In the past, he was a professor at UCLA, a journalist, and a diplomat. His work has appeared in Al Jazeera and the New York Times, and he is a regular guest on Piers Morgan. Shael is currently working on a novel and a nonfiction book. Welcome to the show, and also apparently a New York Mets fan.
Hardcore, lifelong.
All right. So Shael, I want to come in hard with you, and then hopefully we'll soften up afterwards. You're not able to hear. I can't hear. Yeah. So Stephen, maybe give him some headphones. All right. So welcome, Shael Ben-Ephraim.
You got it. Yes, that's me.
So
happy to be here.
So I said I'm gonna come in hot with you at first because this is I'm dying to know this stuff, and then we can have a more general conversation. So Kristof cited you as one of the corroborating sources of his general claims, and he cited a tweet where you listed I don't know how many total incidents you listed, but you listed 4 or 5 cases of actual penetration by dogs. I'll read them. AA told PCHR that soldiers took him into a corridor away from cameras, stripped him naked, unleashed dogs that urinated him, urinated on him before one dog raped him anally for approximately 3 minutes. Next one is he was forced to kneel with his head in the toilet. Guards brought in a dog that mounted and raped him. Next one is tied naked to a metal bed and raped by both a soldier and a dog while the soldiers filmed. Next one is told his lawyer he witnessed soldiers forcing dogs to rape prisoners. Next one is testified that he heard other captives were being raped with bottles by soldiers, and there was also a dog behind us as if the dog was raping us. So maybe that's not an actual penetration. And you write at the end of all these examples, I talked to 2 guards and stayed Teman on more than one occasion. One had seen this happen, and said it was too awful to talk about. The other said that he had heard about it from others and believed it was true. This happened. This is still happening. Then I heard you a couple days ago with this video, and then I want you to explain to me.
Of course, at the time, I didn't believe that Israel was committing many of the crimes that it later turned out that it was. So I talked to guards in Sde Teiman first time in June 2025. And I didn't even ask about that because that didn't seem realistic to me. But then I kept hearing more and more reports of this. And I talked to someone in Gaza who had been in one of these camps, and they told me that this had occurred. So I asked the 2 guards that I had talked to if that had actually happened. One of them said he'd heard talk about it, hadn't seen it. The other one said that he had seen it. Now, it has to be said that the guard who said that he had seen it wasn't speaking about penetration or anything like that. They were talking about having the detainee be sort of exposed and having the dog sort of seem like it was about to mount him. So a very disturbing, threatening kind of thing. So all this talk about whether there's been penetration or not, I don't know if there has been or hasn't been. But this guard saw them using a dog in a sexually threatening way.
Okay, so I want to ask you some questions about this. So in the tweet you said, this happened. And these are specific examples of penetration. And now you say, you don't know whether it happened. So explain that.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that, if there isn't penetration, it's considered some minor issue to be sexually assaulted by dogs. But basically, I believe
what would a sexual assault by a dog be without the penetration?
Well, we're talking about having a dog look like they're threatening to mount you or licking you or other examples that I've heard of what happens here. But yeah, so I believe the testimony of the Palestinians who said that this happened to them. The guards I talked to specifically couldn't confirm having seen that. Okay. So I'm just being honest about what the guards told me.
Now you're being honest.
But sorry?
Now you're being honest. Yes, but you understand?
I was always being honest.
Okay, but then
I didn't believe that this particular detail was that important in terms of what the guards told me, because I believe the testimony of the Palestinians. But if you don't believe the testimony of Palestinians and only believe the testimony of Israeli guards given to me, which is your right, although I don't think that's very good methodology, then I don't have any 100% proof that penetration occurred.
Okay, so let's take this step by step, because I'm not getting into the listen. There was a article that by a New York Times reporter, and you, and we'll get to other things later. As I said, I'm coming in hot. Are one of the pillars that his
no.
Well,
no. I have to push back against that. So when Kristof was preparing for this article, he contacted me and he said, "Can I talk to the guards that you talked to?" And the guards that I talked to went completely off the radar, as did just about any source related to this. I can only assume because there was some sort of order, because at least one of them always responded to me. The other one was more hit and miss. And I've been hearing from other people the same thing, that people are not responding.
This is not responsive to what I'm saying.
I'm being very responsive to what you're saying. Because they could not corroborate the testimony of those 2 guards, they were not important testimony in Kristof's article. They were not mentioned in Kristof's article. Kristof's article depended most heavily on personal testimony from 14 Palestinians, including Palestinians who were willing very bravely to show their faces and their identity, as well as the reports of human rights organizations. Guards I talked to and me, we were not main sources. I'm proud of the fact that I contributed a little bit to this article, but I was not a main source. The guards I talked to were not main sources.
Okay.
And that's
let me get in.
Have stressed my let me finish. People, I'll come in hard and heavy too. People have stressed my involvement in particular because they think that it's easy to discredit me.
Okay.
But my role in this
so I have to stop you there because
it's not been all that important.
Listen, I am not going to filibuster you, and I will stick to the logical universe of responses to specifically what you might say to me. All I said to you was that Kristof relied on you for his article.
Yes, but not as a main source, not even remotely. The main sources were the 14 Palestinians that he interviewed directly. That's a very important thing.
No,
they matter more than I do, and their sources were firsthand. Okay, I'm talking secondhand. So I'm not important.
So let me.
I'm glad to be here talking about it, but I'm not important.
Okay, let me digress for a little bit, and I'll come right back to where we were. Yes, there's 14 stories, but obviously. Testimony against interest is much, much more powerful. When you have Hamas terrorists saying that something happened to them, we say maybe yes, maybe no. It seems convincing, but of course, they're highly motivated to say things that might not be true. And of course, things can also pass around kind of like Kaiser Sose, like nobody's actually seen it, El Diablo, like we don't know. When you have please let me finish. When you have a footnote to the fact that 2 Israeli guards, whistleblowers as it were, have also co-signed this, that's 1,000 times more persuasive to a skeptical person. But we're way off the subject now. The point is that, by the way, just give me a quick answer to this. Did you tell Kristof that the guy told you that there was no penetration? That he hadn't seen it? You didn't tell Kristof that.
We didn't discuss, Kristof and I did not discuss the testimony, the specific testimony of them, because Kristof, let me finish. Kristof, as a professional journalist, doesn't rely on hearsay. He wanted to talk to them directly. He did not ask me what they said, and I did not tell him what they said. What he said to me is, "Can you get?"
Oh, come on now! Now you're off into something that's not even true. He's relying on hearsay because he's relying on your tweet. If he was against hearsay, he wouldn't have cited your tweet. Come on.
The tweet did not appear in the artigle.
It was footnoted. It did appear in the article. It did appear in the article. It appeared.
You did not use. Are you going
to stake things on the fact that a link in an article is not part of the article? Is that your position?
Let me explain this to you slowly.
Is that your position?
Let me explain this to you slowly.
Let me get on to my point. I see what's going on here.
No.
Let me go.
No. I won't let you get onto your point. Okay. When you write a book and you put books in it as footnotes, that does not mean that you endorse the footnotes of every single book that you cited. That's a basic element that you don't seem to understand and how things work.
I'm an idiot. I know.
He is not citing everything that I do. What he did is he took
he's citing that tweet. He's citing that tweet.
But when you cite someone, you don't you don't go and corroborate every single source. Imagine if when you wrote a book, you went and cited and corroborated every single source that is in there. He tried to corroborate that source. He couldn't. So that's why the testimony of the 2 guards did not appear in the article. Because Kristof is a professional journalist.
Okay, so
he did his job well.
Let me tell you what's self-evident to any fair-minded person. If you say this happened at the end of a list of 5 anal penetrations by dogs, and you say someone had seen it, then if they hadn't seen it and you knew they hadn't seen it, there's a problem here.
There's no problem here
if you didn't then tell Kristof, Mr. Kristof, I just want to let you know, it could be a little misleading here because actually I put that the guards saw it, but actually the guards didn't see it. I just want to warn you about that because it could blow up in your face later. But let me ask you a question. These guys that told you, so what you described me is that this guard told you he saw the dog come right up to the people. He saw the dog menacing these prisoners sexually. Well, let me finish. Let me answer the question.
Details?
Let me ask the question. But somehow he wasn't able to see the penetration. So what happened in that instant between what they did see, which had to be imminent to when it happened, to when the penetration is alleged to occurred, that your guard didn't see it? Explain that.
Yeah, no, okay. What the guard told me specifically is that in this case, and there were other cases as well.
No, there's 5 cases here. 5 cases, not this case. 5 cases you put here, yeah.
The other cases have nothing to do with me. The other cases I am bringing from other sources.
You listed 5. So the guard in your tweet only saw one of these cases? That's it?
The other cases are brought from other reports. Have you read the tweet?
I just read the whole tweet out loud. I talked to 2 guards. One had seen this happen and said it was too awful to talk about. The other said he had heard about it from others and believed it was true. This has happened.
But the cases above are brought from reports and testimony from Palestinians that I didn't talk to specifically,
I know.
Which is very clear in the
So the guards
tweet.
here, were referring to one specific case here. Is that what you're saying?
The guards had told me that they've heard about many cases.
Okay, so
one of the guards had seen a specific case.
Which specific case did he see? Which specific case did he see?
None of the ones that are in that tweet.
Oh, so another
the tweet
case. Okay.
refers to
Okay.
the testimony
Okay.
of Palestinians. Which
So explain to me, if you told me this story, I'd feel like they were menacing the dog, menacing the terrorist sexually.
There was,
and then I fainted. I turned away. I didn't hear any screams. Like
I've really never been in an interview like this. Okay,
it's about time.
So let me explain this to you. There was a detainee who, by the way, was later on released with no charges whatsoever. You said that they're all Hamas. If they were Hamas, they wouldn't be out there telling the story. Something that you neglected to mention and probably
I don't think I said the word Hamas, but go ahead.
You probably don't understand how
I don't think I said Hamas, did I?
Yes, you did.
When? Just now?
Hamas terrorists have an interest to lie. You besmirched the victims of rape as Hamas terrorists
Okay.
when Israel was unable to find any proof because you're a racist.
Okay.
And you're here to justify Israeli war crimes because you're a Nazi. That's what you are. You're disgusting. And it's an absolute shame that I was put in touch with someone like you to come on your disgusting podcast.
Okay, but I asked you a fair question.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
I am.
For what you're doing. You take someone who was raped in custody and you say that they're Hamas terrorists. If they were Hamas terrorists, you think Israel wouldn't have kept them based on their very low evidentiary standards? They can even lock you up in executive detention for months with no proof. That means these people were completely innocent. They were let out. They're not Hamas terrorists. And do you know what cost there is?
I think I just said terrorists. Said terrorists, right?
Why don't you listen for a second? Because you might learn something.
No. First answer my question, then you can say whatever you want. Why did the guard not see the penetration?
I don't take dictations from you.
All right. Say what you want.
I'm not your inmate. I'm not your inmate. You're not my Nazi guard. So you'll listen to what I tell you.
People tell me you were a good faith guy. Go ahead.
I heard the same about you. I
asked you a very fair question.
What's the fair question?
What you say the guard didn't see the penetration, but saw everything leading up to it. So
I said so.
Right. So why didn't he see?
Why are you even talking about?
He told you the story. What intervened between this imminent sexual assault and the penetration that the guard didn't see it?
What happened was you had an inmate who, again, was not a Hamas terrorist, who had his pants stripped off, was put against the table, and was told, this dog is going to rape you. The dog got up on its hind legs. It did not actually penetrate the terrified inmate. Now you've gone further
because you said you didn't know.
But that's what happened.
You said you didn't know whether there was penetration. You said you didn't know whether. Yes. Now you're saying there wasn't penetration.
I don't have direct evidence that there is penetration. The guards I talked to did not see
Your Honor.
penetration. They heard stories. All right.
Go ahead. Continue. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. There's nothing to continue. This is not a good faith conversation. I've never had a conversation like this.
Listen.
Are you a professional or what are you exactly?
I'm a Nazi.
I guess it's a comedy club, so.
I'm a Nazi and we're good at interrogations.
So good.
Listen, Shad. I know you're upset, but it is actually These are actually fair questions. And whether you don't know this or not, I actually think the dog rape is possible. I can play you. You know what? I'll play this for you. Can you play the sprayed on his back one? Yeah. So I'll show you what a Nazi I am. Good. This is. I'll read the subtitles while this is going. This was an interview that scared the shit out of me on the BBC. Al Jazeera is showing it, but I think maybe it wasn't BBC. I thought it was. Oh, there was an article about the same thing on the BBC with a witness, and he says something very ominous here. Go ahead, play it, Steve.
أقول لك على أصعب موقف أنا عشته.
Let me tell you about the worst thing I experienced in Shtei Taman prison. They called the names of 3 people, and I was one of them. We came out into a cement courtyard dedicated to one form of torture. They removed our blindfolds. We were crouching on our knees. They came and took one of the other men. They beat him. After they beat him, they forced him to the ground on his belly. They tied his hands and tied his feet. They were about 8 or 9 soldiers. They stripped him of his underpants. A captain came and sprayed something on his backside. I'll pause it there. A captain came and sprayed something on his backside. This is what scared me. And by the way, it was. I'm going to continue. It was then echoed in this interview I did with this British dog expert that one way this could happen is through the spray of some pheromones or hormones or estrus scents. And if you watch this video, it's a pretty subtle detail for the guy to drop. And I thought to myself, he didn't. Let's say he was like. It was cynical. He didn't say a captain came and sprayed something on his backside, which seemed to attract the dogs, like something like it was very, very subtle. So that worried me and caused me to take a closer look as to what might not be true, which I think is better than Nazi. But anyway, let's continue. There was a dog there. They unleashed the dog on him. The dog raped the young man. It raped him, literally speaking. Rape. Okay, so that's that. So that is not only testimony, but it has a detail there, which a fair-minded person would have to say, well, that's I can't just dismiss that out of hand. But my other points and my cross-examination of your tweet, I think these speak for themselves. I think you went from this happened to I'm not sure it happened to now on this show saying, well, actually, it didn't happen. That particular incident.
You didn't say any of that.
You said there was no penetration in the incident.
I absolutely believe that it happened.
Not believe. You can believe anything you want.
That I talked to did not involve penetration. I said that on Piers Morgan. I never said in my tweet that it involved penetration. This is
yes, you did.
A focus.
You did say on your tweet.
No, I did not. I did not say in my tweet that the testimony of the guards involved penetration. This is a detail that I did not say. You're reading into it. You're trying to find inconsistencies that are not there.
Okay, fair enough.
I've always said
based on your tweet there,
I never contradicted myself and I never lied.
Okay, and then we'll move on.
Did I have said no penetration in the initial tweet? Probably. Honestly, at the time when I wrote it, this was before it went all these things went mainstream.
Yeah.
Just the fact that I had to say, listen, Israel is using dogs to assault inmates. And I think this is actually happening was shocking enough for me. I never thought that the main issue would be whether they penetrated or not. That seemed to me beside the point, especially since people were testifying that they did, so I believe them. This was not what I was dealing with. After I put the tweet, it went mainstream. Everyone started talking about whether they penetrated or didn't penetrate. So I decided to clarify. This has turned into a whole thing of, oh, he's lying, he's saying this, he's saying that.
Okay.
I never changed what I said.
Okay.
I heard what I heard.
Okay, Shai.
And everyone can say whatever they want about it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't rely on what I said. It relies on what the Palestinians say,
that's true.
Which is very convincing.
No, it relies on whatever's true or not true. So we'll get there. So just
I apologize for what I said before, but it really annoyed me when you said that they're all Hamas and they have reason to lie. And I still apologize, but that's just not fair to these people who have survived brutal torture and sexual assault.
Okay, so let me just say,
I think I should apologize for what I said. You should apologize for what you said. Not to me, to them.
When you list the 5 cases of anal rape in the tweet, and then you say this happened.
All right, I'm done with this.
What did you mean?
I'm done with this point. I'm done with this point.
Okay.
I explained myself.
Okay,
and I'm done with it. I'm moving on from that.
Okay, we'll move on from that. So
I don't think it's important. You think it's important. I respect that. I already explained what happened. This is not important. What's important is what happened to these people, not what I wrote in a tweet when I was very upset.
Okay, but the problem is
not contradict anything that I said anywhere
do you remember?
else.
Okay. Do you remember the hashtag? Do you remember a hashtag Believe All Women? You are perilously close to hashtag Believe All Terrorists. I understand that
they're not terrorists. These are innocent men.
Hashtag Believe All Prisoners. Hashtag. What I'm saying is that you're
again besmirching people who were not found guilty of anything.
Okay.
The only thing that they're guilty of.
Okay, but I'm making a point, and you understand my point. There is a big difference between the just as a matter of faith believing the accounts of someone who claims something and having a corroboration from someone who has every interest not to corroborate it. And this is a crucial distinction in hearings and in law and in justice. And we saw how often hashtag Believe All Women turned out not to be true, and very often was true. And by the way, I'm kind of veered into this. If you listen to anything I said, I have not been saying these people are lying. I'm doing a look into the methodology of the people who are claiming that it happened. And I think it's elementary that if you guys were sitting on the knowledge that this guard didn't see it, and you're aware of the obvious interpretation of the tweet, it was incumbent upon you guys to bring that out. Okay, let's go on. Let's go on to other.
Considering that they did not appear in the article at all, what you're saying is ridiculous.
Okay,
they did not appear in the article. Their testimony didn't appear in the article. So what you're looking for is nuances in something that it was decided.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't talk directly to Kristof, that it should not appear in the article. You're focusing on that because it's a very strong case and you're trying to find some sort of weakness, and it was decided not to include that because it could not be fully verified.
All right.
So
are you aware?
If you pick on something that's not in the story, then of course you're going to find a weakness there, but it's not there for a reason. And I don't know if you're
I think we're going to,
or if you don't understand that.
You were
you're talking as if it's very important.
You were unit 8200, right?
Yeah.
You're a high IQ person. I'm going to say, as a mediocre IQ person to a high IQ person, when somebody writes something and then they make a factual statement and then they put a footnote, they are endorsing that footnote. I'm sorry you don't understand that. It's as plain as day. Okay, let me ask you a question. Are you aware? And this is one of my knocks on Kristof's article, because it's very easy to find the answer. Are you aware of the baseline? So baselines are very important before you can know how to react to something. If I say, X number of people died from a vaccine, you don't know how many people died from other vaccines, how many vaccines were given out. If I say, 1 out of 10,000 Japanese people are dying on the highways in Tokyo, you have no way of knowing that's reckless driving or that's very safe, right? So baselines are very important. Are you aware of the baseline of American prisoners who claim that they were raped, sexually abused by guards?
No.
Do you think, before I tell you what it is, do you think it's relevant information?
Not necessarily, no. Well, what is relevant is the Israeli case. What's relevant is
well, are you making the case? Are you making the case that Israel?
It's a completely different cultural milieu, and this is a very important thing to stress.
Yeah.
We never had in the past Palestinians come out in public to say that they had been raped with their names and their faces, because Palestinian culture is an honor culture, and you face incredibly strong consequences for doing so. And even though a lot of Palestinian inmates have been raped in the past,
What does this have to do
They
with my
did
question?
not come out publicly to say so.
I'm not.
Meanwhile, in American culture is a culture that centers on victims.
Shael, my whole question is based on the fact that they're telling the truth, right? That's if I'm saying what the baseline is. I'm not.
No. I'm saying the baseline's irrelevant because of the cultural differences.
No.
You won't let me unpack any of my points.
Because
I'm not really sure why I'm here.
Because you're misunderstanding.
You can have this conversation with yourself very easily, and then I won't be here to
fair enough,
interrupt you.
but you're misunderstanding. But you're misunderstanding my point. Then I just want to get you back on track to what I'm asking. I'm presuming for the sake of argument that everything in the article is true. Okay, let's just presume that it's all true. Now you have a case of 14 Palestinian prisoners who have been sexually assaulted. And you say, well, that's terrible. Now, I would say that if you had told me without any information, Noam, do you think that anybody's being sexually abused in the prisons in Israel? Like Ehud Olmert, I would say, yeah, I probably do, especially since, October 7th is the most traumatic event that ever happened. And we should talk about the Civil Commission in a second, but the Civil Commission reports that every single hostage was either sexually assaulted or was witnessed sexual assault. So what I'm saying is that the baseline in American prisoners, and these are not prisoners of war, these are not people that the prisoners themselves have a grudge against. These are not people who might have been involved in the actual murder of the loved ones of the prisoners, of the prison guards. It's 2%. 2% of all American prisoners claim they were sexually assaulted by their guards. So it's something like, we mean hundreds and hundreds of Israelis, of Palestinians were sexually assaulted per year if Israel were no worse than the United States. So I'm going to make the argument to you. And by the way, I'm making this argument. I have to say I'm very unsympathetic to this argument in some way because I think that we are past the time where this stuff shouldn't be eradicated. There should not be 1 square inch of prison that are not monitored by cameras and AI and everything, such that abuse should never happen. So nevertheless, this seems to be a kind of intractable problem in penal systems in the West. It's 2% in the West, and we can only imagine what it's like in a prison in Gaza, right? But if Israel is, we have no evidence that it's even in the ballpark of 2%. But let's presume it is 2%. Does the fact that this is the baseline in America, is that significant to your judgment of the whole matter? Do you view it as a uniquely Israeli evil, or do you say Israel is falling prey to the same kind of problem that happens in prisons all over the world? It's awful. We should do something to stop it, but it's not a cause in Israel. It's not a policy.
Yeah. So the comparison is very misleading and basically irrelevant.
Okay.
What happened in Israel is this sexual assault isn't even the central element here. The camps where people from Gaza have been kept have been turned into absolute hells on earth, with sexual assault just being one of the many components involved, including depriving people of healthcare, beatings, starvation, sexual assault, murder, and holding people with no evidence for months, denying them the ability to communicate with lawyers. All of this as an intentional policy of the Israeli government by Itamar Ben-Gvir, who said many times that his goal is to make life as terrible as possible for Palestinian inmates.
He said they were eating too well. He did. I agree with you.
That's not all he said. He said a lot of things. He made it. He opened Svet Man, which was closed because it was a terrible facility. It was such a terrible facility that Israel closed it. Ben-Gvir said, no, you have to reopen it and make it worse than it was before. This is all intentional. He created a culture of lawlessness and disregard for human rights intentionally, where this sort of behavior was encouraged by the government. Now, I don't know how it works in American prisons. I'm a Middle East guy. But if in American prisons, the governor
Justice Department data. But go ahead.
No. I'm talking about
the data I gave you.
policy goal here.
Yeah.
listen, yeah, I'm talking about the policy goal here. I don't know if there are American governors or the president or whoever doing the same thing, saying make the prisoners suffer as much as possible because that's what we want. But that means that the country is completely, liable for what happens. It's the country's fault. The country created the situation intentionally. It's not some sort of thing that happens all the time in prisons where you try to make the conditions good, but things happen. This is an intentional policy. You know it. I know it. I just think that what you're trying to do is you're trying to create excuses for horrible behavior that you know perfectly well is intentional. And the only reason to do that is because, you're acting as an apologist intentionally. I'm sure there are prisons in the world that are worse than the Israeli prisons.
Okay, so
Honestly, the Israeli prisons are now amongst the worst in the world.
So let me get,
and that's an intentional policy.
All right.
And that's not some sort of mistake.
Okay, can I talk now?
And that makes it a terrible human rights violation. And the other thing that you need to focus on, because you specifically have called them terrorists more than once, is how few of these people are actually going to be charged for anything, and how few of these people there's any evidence against, which makes it a much bigger miscarriage of justice. To be sure, in American prisons, sometimes people are in there for a while. They've been indicted for something or other. They're awaiting trial. But in this case, we're talking about 2 years with no indictments, no trials, often released because there's lack of evidence, or sent home in a body bag, or a broken human being. These are intentional policies. And trying to obfuscate that is just encouraging more of this. And those of you who support Israel are making a terrible mistake.
All right.
When I started talking about Sdet Teiman over a year ago, I supported Israel. I was a Zionist. I came out with all this evidence. I talked to people in Sdet Teiman. People went out and besmirched me. And I talked to people in the government, and they admitted to me that it's right, but they're not going to do anything about it. And people who defend Israel kept making excuses for it, and the problem has gotten worse and worse and worse. Just today,
please.
Let me finish.
Come on now.
One last thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Just today, they released a video of Ben-Gvir torturing the people from the flotilla. And that is a complete PR disaster for Israel. And these prisons are going to continue to embarrass Israel until people like you who support Israel hold Israel accountable. It's going to continue to be a bleeding ulcer on support for Israel. Not only is it bad for Palestinians, it's bad for Israel. It's bad for everyone. There's no need to defend it. This is a crime against humanity, and these prisons need to be shut down.
Okay. So you make accusations that it's a policy, it's intentional. By the way, I had said more than once, it's astounding to hear you, cast these aspersions at me as if, you don't know a fucking thing about me. But I think that it's completely reckless for Israel to put somebody like Ben-Gvir in charge of the prisons because, yes, the fish, I said this last week, I said the fish stinks from the head down. And when you have somebody at the top of an organization telegraphing that kind of vibe, people take it as permission to do things they might not otherwise do. So there's nothing you said that I shouldn't say that. That particular thing I don't disagree with. However, when you say things, come on, it's his policy. I mean, all I could say is that Nick Kristof could not write this is policy because he would need...
Not about the rapes. Not about the rapes.
He would need...
You don't know how high up... No.
I didn't interrupt you.
Kristof,
I let you talk for a long time. That you have to... if you want to say it's policy, you have to, have some evidence that it's policy. Yes, it is policy to... What I heard what Ben-Gvir say was that they wanted to reduce... that the prisoners should get treated no better than the bare minimum. That's what he said. In other words, whatever the bare minimum standard is under the law, that's what they should be treated. Whatever the calorie count is, that's how many calories they get. I don't like any of that. I'm just trying to be accurate as to what he said. But it is important to know whether or not this is rogue or not, because Kristof, or how does he end his? So he starts his column by saying, it is impossible to know how common sexual assaults against Palestinians are, right? Which sounds kind of like a, disinterested disclaimer. I'm just saying something is occurring, but I have no idea what the frequency or the number is. But he ends his column saying, think of it this way. The horrific abuse inflicted on Israeli women on October 7th now happens to Palestinians day after day. So now day after day is not a specific quantity, but it's a phrase that's, I believe, intended to apply a kind of a routineness and a pervasiveness beyond anything the article establishes with its 14 cases. And I wrote some notes to myself. So there's a very difficult argument I want to make. I know you might just blow a gasket and walk out when I make it, but I actually think it's at least worth discussing. And that is categories like there is murder and manslaughter, right? And an intractable, predictable problem within prison systems. Let me just what I wrote. So I said there's a difference between murder and manslaughter. There is a difference between planning and permission. There was a difference between sending fighters out. So in this civil commission that Israel just released, by the way, I totally dismissed this thing that the Kristof thing was timed to preempt that. It could be true, but there's no evidence of that. And the Times' denial of it was very, very direct. You'd imagine there'd be some kind of paper trail, so it's very risky for the Times to issue such a unequivocal denial. But anyway, in that civil commission, I assume you respect the civil commission. It had thousands and thousands of documents and videos and took years to assemble, and they have an archive. Apparently, it claims that terrorists, I'm going to use the term in this time, were given a kit. And in the kit, it had a phrase book with Arabic to Hebrew translations of phrases like, take your pants off, lie down, spread your legs. And in that kit was also zip ties. And, if you look at the Israeli situation, prison guards, in general, at least in America, I don't know how it happens in Israel, but prison guards are a pretty tough lot. And we also imagine that they might even want to become prison guards because they're sadists. And the same way I worry about, kindergarten teachers taking that job because they might like children. So this is, the ugly underbelly of real life. But there is a difference between a rogue group of guards doing what is, so prevalent in prison systems and providing a rape kit to your soldiers when you send them on their way to a mission. And I'll say one more thing. If you don't think there's a difference, I can prove to you that you actually do think there's a difference. And I'll tell you how. I'm almost finished. If I were to tell you that there was evidence that Israel actually provided a Duolingo app to its guards to explain to them how to tell the Palestinian prisoners that they were going to get raped by dogs and to tell them how to say it in Arabic, and also provided in that kit instruments of torture, you wouldn't say, it's the same thing as what who cares about that? It's the same thing as what we've already heard. Obviously, you'd understand immediately, like, this is leaps and bounds more indicting of Israel than the fact that some guards have done something. And what Kristof does at the end is obviously he's setting off the two things against each other. And I'm saying that even assuming it's true, I would not set this off against providing rape kits with Berlitz translation apps. How do you feel about that argument?
Listen, I have no interest in defending Hamas. I grew up in Israel and lost several friends in Hamas bombings, narrowly survived one myself. Hamas are terrorists, and I have no interest in defending them. I'm saddened that Israel's ability to defend itself now is by saying, well, we're marginally better than Hamas. Hamas sent these kits. We didn't. We rape more occasionally. They rape more systematically. I don't know. That may be true. But if you look at it in another way, Israel's actually worse because Hamas had one day to do all that damage. Meanwhile, or in the case of the hostages, more repeatedly for a few individuals. Meanwhile, Israel is doing this systematically to a lot of people over a period of years. So,
except the two guards that you spoke to, who were speaking frankly with you, did not tell you about anything systematically. So, if it's systematic, how come your guards didn't see it?
The systematic that they were talking. No, what that tweet was about dogs.
Well, what did they say?
About sexual abuse? That's very systematic, and there's so much more evidence of that. Using dogs is much more problematic, difficult. There aren't dogs involved in most. There's all these. No need to get into the technicalities.
So you're saying that the dog thing is. You're saying that the dog thing is not systematic.
I don't think most detainees, I don't believe were sexually assaulted by dogs. I don't think that's the average experience of a Palestinian.
Right, but you believe it's part of you believe it's part of Ben-Gvir's desires.
It's a culture that he created. I don't think he cares.
This is important because you said before that this is what he wants, and now you're saying, but you're not going to include this is what he wants. You're not including the dog thing in what he wants. Or he doesn't care.
Yes, it is what he wants. Listen, if I heard about it, then Ben-Gvir has heard about it. This isn't happening, rarely and that secretly. People are very aware of this happening. And if Ben-Gvir wanted it to stop, he would put a stop to it. I don't think that Ben-Gvir wants anything to stop. Okay. I don't know if Ben-Gvir ever says about anything, this is too much. Stop.
Now, the last question.
I'm not aware that he creates the culture. He's responsible for it. It's not.
I agree with that.
I have no reason or interest to absolve him from any of this. If I see evidence of him saying, no, stop this, then okay. But I doubt we'll ever find a document of Ben-Gvir saying to anyone, this is going too far.
I agree.
That's not what he does.
All right.
He wants to win. He hates Arabs and he wants to win elections. And he thinks that this is going to help him win elections. And he loves it. And he may not have, there's no evidence he gave the order to rape anyone, but it's very clear that he's never stopped anyone from raping anyone and has not, punished anyone for raping anyone. And that is a routine part of being a Palestinian detainee, to at the very least experience sexual threats and harassment of various kinds, and very often full-on rape. That's the typical detainee experiences that.
Yeah.
From everything I talked to, people who have been there, from their lawyers, the guards. This is typical. That's systematic. Right. Dogs is like, it's a curiosity almost. It's sort of like the Israeli guards testing how foul and subhuman they can get. It's the lead. Let me ask a question. We're going to run out of time. So let me ask a question. So then much of the rest of the article, I think you'll agree with me, is based on this Euromed guy, Rami Abdu, right? Well, some of it, but Nick got people on the record to speak with their faces exposed. Like, that's something that you're missing.
No, I'm not missing it. I'm missing. I already addressed that.
Rami's report for Euromed was very important in exposing this phenomenon. I read it too, and that made me ask questions. But Nick built on this and got his own testimony from people who had experience.
Okay, what do you think of Rami?
Relying on Euromed.
What do you think?
Euromed made him ask questions.
What do you think about Euromed?
I think Euromed is a legitimate human rights organization. I don't think that having some ties to the government in Gaza immediately invalidates all of your methodology. I haven't seen that they make anything up.
Okay, let me ask you this.
I don't buy the whole thing of casting aspersions that this person has these ties, this person has those ties. After all, the people who did the report that you take as fact have ties to the genocidal government of Israel.
Let's ask you a question.
And we still look at the work that they do.
No, the report actually, I mean, it may have some ties, but the report I think was independent. But of course, you can't compare an open society like Israel where they're going to show their research. So they have thousands of documents and videos and footnotes and there's 200 people or something. Am I making it? I remember that wrong? There's a very, very large group.
They investigate what they want to investigate. Okay, so, they don't investigate the culpability of Israel for October 7th.
No, come on. That was not their portfolio. It was investigate. So let me ask a question.
Why wasn't it their portfolio?
Hold on a second. Just hold on. No, let me get to my question. Rami Abdu, on October 8th. Now, he is the head of a human rights organization. Now, I think that, it's kind of like that. There was that thing where, a majority of genocide scholars that belong to the Genocide Organization of America believe this genocide, but it turned out anybody could just go sign up and become a genocide scholar. I think that anybody can just put human rights on their organization and he gets some sort of cachet. But I think that, I have a feeling you're going to agree with me. If you're the head of a human rights organization, on October 8th, Rami Abdu tweeted about Hamas, heroic nights, pure glory. He called the scenes of the massacres cinematic. And by October 9th, like 36 hours after it, he was accusing Israel of genocide. Now, I defy you to tell me What methodology could there possibly have been to this guy? Isn't it obvious that he's 1,000 times more what you accused me of being? A Nazi, an apologist, someone who's not thorough, only someone who jumps to conclusions. How could anybody on October 9th have concluded that it was genocide? How could anybody see Shawnee Luke being beaten on the back of that pickup truck and tweet out, "This is cinematic"? How could anybody call them heroic nights? Heroic nights is the most plausible, except that people are being fucking murdered. So then if you're going to permit Rami Abdu these things, what's your problem with Ben-Gvir?
So the actual work that Euromed did, question is the methodology there sound?
Why would you trust their work? Listen, if Ben-Gvir said those things and I asked you to trust Ben-Gvir's work, you say, what are you, fucking moron? Look at what he said. He wants every Arab dead. You already said this stuff to me. He hates the Arabs. He this and that. Why would you believe anything he says? But you won't say it for Rami Abdu, and that's why I call bullshit on you.
Ben-Gvir is actually torturing and killing people. Rami Abdul is writing reports on Israeli human rights violations.
You're 8,200, right? High IQ. Come on now. Let's deal with the heart of the matter here.
The comparison is ridiculous.
Yes, it's ridiculous. Why shouldn't the head of a human rights organization talk about the violence? Are these human rights violations when they murder people at a music festival? Are those not human rights violations? And he's calling it cinematic. He's calling it cinematic. Why can't you admit anything that's in front of your face? He's called it cinematic. He saw the same stuff we did. I am 1,000 times more objective and ready to concede than you are. You won't concede anything.
I literally have conceded that Hamas is a terrorist organization.
Okay, Hamas. So then let's take it from there. Why are they terrorists? Because of the music festival? Is that evidence of the terrorism?
Because they intentionally kill.
Is the music festival evidence of the terrorism?
Of course, those were civilians.
When Abdu says the scenes are cinematic,
I don't have to agree with everything everyone says in order to look at a report.
But you can just disregard it. I trust him. I trust this man.
Not at all. Not at all.
That's why I asked you. I started by asking you, what do you think of him? You didn't say I don't trust him.
I don't have any particular. I look at the evidence and the methodology of a specific report. So even when Israel puts out reports like the one that
why would you believe the methodology from a guy who speaks like that? They can say whatever they want. They just put human rights.
Methodology means that you are restricting what you're going to use in a report. If I say something off the cuff in a tweet or something like that, and then I write a very careful report, the careful report is what you should take more seriously because it's more well-grounded. We have our emotional responses.
Cinematic?
And we have our work.
Okay, what do you say about a person who has that emotional response?
I agree with you. that about what he said being awful. But
what does it tell you about him? What does it tell you about the person? What does it tell you about the person that you trust?
It tells me that a lot of people on the Palestinian side feel that Israel had treated the Palestinians incredibly badly for a very long time, and that when the Palestinians did what they did on October 7th, it was something that Israelis had coming.
Oh, so that's how the Israelis could feel about the prison abuse.
Yeah, I'm very aware of that.
But you don't excuse it from the Israelis.
But I don't accept that from anyone. October 7th was crime against humanity. And the way Israel's treating prisoners right now is a crime against humanity. And I don't think that what Hamas did on October 7th did anything to advance the cause of the Palestinians. It's made their lives much, much worse, and I think it was a terrible mistake. But I don't go around saying that I'm not going to read a report by anyone I disagree with, because the truth is that I'd be stuck reading very few reports.
Okay, I'm going to tell you.
My opinions are my opinions,
I'm going to tell you what I know is true. If Ben-Gvir issued a report that was the mirror image of something Rami Abdu said, you would say, how could you possibly believe any work product of Ben-Gvir? He hates the Arabs. And you will not come to the same conclusion about Rami Abdu. And then that's your right to do. But I have another question. If you're Nick Kristof, if you're the New York Times now, and you're not going to do a news story, you're not going to investigate the prisons. You're not going to get into the logistics, the circumstantial reasons why this might not be possible. What kind of surveillance system? Who has in charge of the cameras? What about the doctors who would have to treat people? Because we've heard that there were injuries. Like if you're not going to do all that sleuthing to find out the whole big picture, but you're going to rely on top of the testimonies on the work product of a man who called October 7th cinematic and was screaming genocide something like 36 hours after October 7th, would you run that story? Would you? That plus your tweet where you seem to say that don't you think the Times violated some very fundamental rules of care in terms of running a story? At least share. Wouldn't you at least share? Wouldn't you at least tell your Kristof, listen, if you want to run this, Nick, I mean, you're Pulitzer Prize winner, but you better also cite his tweets. You have to tell the readers, because my standard is this. I know I'm talking longer than I let you. My standard is always this about keeping things a secret or about the way you put things. You are honest only if the following is true. I'm sorry, you are dishonest. You are dishonest if the following is true. Someone hears what you say, then learns other facts that you knew, and then says, that's different. I didn't realize that. When someone has the reaction from a reporter, wait, you didn't tell me that. That means the reporter, in my opinion, is dishonest. For Nicholas Kristof to cite this organization and not share the level of outrageous tweets by the guy in charge, 99 out of 100 people who now have hearing for the first time that this guy called October 7th cinematic are going to say, holy shit, I didn't realize that. I thought this was like Amnesty International. I thought that Euro, human rights, I thought this was on the up and up. No, this is run by a guy. He's not just anti-Israel. He's actually pro-Hamas. In his own words, you don't find a problem there?
Not particularly, no.
Okay.
We're talking about an opinion column here.
Yes. Opinion columns need to be straight up.
You're not going to find many opinion columns where you get 14 people testifying to crimes that occurred against them. The amount of care and work that Nick put into this story. And, we both know that if he had cited Amnesty and had cited another organization, all the Zionists would be talking about how Amnesty is anti-Semitic, and they'd be showing how they support Hamas.
But he didn't cite Amnesty, and maybe I would agree with you then. But that's not what happened.
What immediately happens as soon as anyone attacks Israel is people look for any slight weakness that they can find besmirching people, and that often comes to saying, "Look, these people are anti-Israel," as if the fact that you don't support all these crimes that Israel's committed over all these years is evidence of dishonesty.
You wouldn't give a column that cited Ben-Gvir as a source for something like this. You wouldn't give it 10 seconds of this nonsense.
Ben-Gvir is not a human rights organization. Ben-Gvir is a politician who has been convicted for incitement.
I'm saying you don't take seriously. You do not take
war crimes.
You don't take seriously. You do not take seriously the work of a human rights organization headed by someone who expresses awe at slaughter and atrocities.
The comparison would be if they were using Hamas as a.
Come on, I'm right. Can't you just admit I'm right? Can't you admit it?
No, you're not right.
All right,
you're not right.
So it doesn't matter what he's
organization that expresses opinions that we both disagree with. That doesn't mean that they're a discredited human rights organization. You would have to find that they fabricated evidence or have other misdeeds, which none of you have found.
Right, but listen to your argument. We say Ben. But do you understand how you contradict yourself? Ben-Gvir is at the charge of this organization. We understand by the things that Ben-Gvir says and believes. We understand as a human matter how this filters down to the people under him. But when it comes to Euromed. No. How can you possibly think that the fact that this guy... Let me finish. How can you possibly think that the stuff that this guy is saying about how wonderful October 7th, how could that possibly filter down to that organization? Give me a fucking break.
Let me show you that you're wrong.
Please.
If the Israeli Prison Services today released a study, very good...
I'm talking about journalistic methods. I'm not saying it didn't happen. Yeah,
Listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If the Israeli Prison Services today released a study on the treatment of Palestinian prisoners with, a lot of evidence and citations, and it looked very serious. I would look at it very carefully to see what I could learn from it, and then I would talk to other people to see what they could corroborate from it. I would use it as a starting point for an investigation. Even though Ben-Gvir is at the head of the organization, this gives me data that I can start to look at, and I can start to unpack, and I can look at the methodology and see where it's correct and where it's incorrect. And the fact that Ben-Gvir is at the head of the organization is something I would definitely take into account. Like, it's not gospel, but I would look at this report and try to figure out what.
But it was enough for you to.
Let me finish. Yeah. And there's a good chance that this prison service report would have things that are 100% correct, because it had serious people working on it, had serious evidence in it. Right. Of course, I would understand that the intent of the report might be somewhat suspect, and I take it into account and try to corroborate it elsewhere. I would treat it as evidence, just as I did in this case.
Yeah.
What I did with a quote from his report is I went and I talked to these guards and I asked them what they think about it. Is this bullshit? Because honestly, I thought it was bullshit. I knew the rapes were happening because I heard that before. But the dogs, I thought that was bullshit. And they told me, no, it's not bullshit. So that's what I did. That's why I totally believe it. And then I look at the people who talk to Nick Kristof, and they confirm it even more. And I have no doubt that this is happening.
No, well, a lot of these
I don't know to what extent, but yeah. And if there was a prison services report that had very useful information, I would look at it too. All and right. You know that.
Okay, so obviously
of its framing for sure.
I believe a lot of these sources are recursive, meaning they rely. I'm not sure how many there are. It's very difficult to understand, but and I do think obviously there has to be some truth to some of the stories. So then let's maybe you and I, if there's some way to do it, find some people who can really tell us on the record what goes on. What's the nature of cameras there? Like there was this one case which is pretty convincing of a rape of a Palestinian prisoner, where there was somebody put on charges and the prisoner left and they had to drop the charges, or they did drop the charges because the witness was gone. They claim maybe there's a pretext, but anyway, it's on camera. What's interesting is it's on camera. They went behind something, but they were not able to turn the cameras off, right? And they knew they were on camera, which is what's amazing. But I think what I'm saying speaks for itself. I think that if this was the opposite way, listen, my Nazi thought process was, and I said this to many people, look, if these were Israeli hostages coming back from Gaza who were reporting that they were raped by dogs, would we just say, oh, come on, that's impossible. That didn't happen. Why are you lying? We wouldn't. We would take them seriously. We might wonder, are they telling the truth? But we would give a thorough and good faith investigation into what their claims were. And that is what I demanded of myself when I heard these accusations. And I think it's exactly what I did. I'm astonished that you won't cede any ground. I think it's a disgrace. I mean, you can't have a better, oxymoronical situation than the guy in charge of a human rights organization lauding slaughter. But if that's not too much for you, let the jury decide. And then, of course, Kristof describes. He says there's no evidence that Israeli leaders ordered rapes, but then he says Euromed Rights Monitor, a Geneva-based advocacy group often critical of Israel, concludes that Israel employs often critical of Israel. Is that the impression you would have of those tweets I read to you? It's a bit much, isn't it? Like, let's just be fair. Anyway, my gut reaction is that a certain number of these things are certainly true for the reasons that you stated. I'm going to interview another dog expert now, and then I can try to get a beat on whether I think it actually is impossible. I don't think it's impossible. And I don't put it past the darkest of people to do such a thing, especially if it could be done easily.
One thing you need to ask yourself is why you're so outraged at tweets and journalistic malpractice, much of it imagined, and are talking very hushed, quiet tones about the actual rape and the torture. Like, your emotional temperature when someone dares to impugn Israel is so high, and your emotional temperature when someone is treating Palestinians as subhuman is so low, and you show yourself when you call them all terrorists, and I think that's disgraceful. And I think that you tell yourself a lot of lies in order to ignore the fact that you are nothing but a cheap war crimes justifier. You're using a lot of words and a lot of verbiage to justify the worst crimes in the world today.
Are you back to calling me a Nazi again? Are you apologize for this already?
No, you're not a Nazi.
You're resetting. Okay.
You are a war crimes justifier and a sophisticated
so
one.
let me
But I challenge anyone to listen to this interview and listen to when you were outraged.
Okay.
You're outraged when someone
let me
has
respond.
A tweet that dares to criticize Israel.
Let me
but
respond.
When someone does something terrible to Palestinians, you're like, well, I think maybe it probably happened. Maybe it happened. And then when you talk about someone tweeting, he tweeted something I didn't like. But
all right, you're conflating all sorts of concepts. Well, is that how I sound? You imitate me like my wife imitates me. Let me just say something.
Well, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe there's
let me just say something.
So the disgrace is you,
dude,
not me.
Okay.
The disgrace are people who justify war crimes, not people who try to expose
Okay, enough
them.
Now. Let me say something. Enough.
History will show who's the disgrace.
Okay,
here,
let me answer now. First of all,
no one's going to be like, oh, the great person who defended war crimes.
Okay, can I say something?
He was a great hero. He sat in a comedy cellar and defended war crimes.
Okay, let me answer.
Yeah.
The word justify is completely out of order here because there's nothing that I've said that could even be remotely interpreted as justifying. Not in my.
You call all of them Hamas.
Hold on. Let me get to that. I'm going to get to that. Let me get to that because not only on this matter, but on the matter of aid, I've been very outspoken about saying how furious it makes me. There's nothing in me that at all justifies it. As a matter of fact, I said there's no excuse for it. I don't know why everything is not surveilled, why there's not a screen everywhere. And we're having a conversation about the merits of an article. If you were to want to discuss with me how I feel about such things, it's the opposite of what you're saying. That's number one. The other thing is, I did not mean to cast aspersions on anybody by calling them terrorists. As a matter of fact, in the previous show I did where I played I referred to that interview that I showed you, I said Hamas, and I said, well, no, he may not be Hamas. I don't know what he is. You remember me saying that? Like I was careful not to call him Hamas. Yes, I presume that the people in the prisons are there because they're charged with terrorism. But if you want to really get careful, I also will assume that some of them are there innocently. I happen to oppose the death penalty because innocent people get executed. I know that there are always innocent people in any pool of people being accused. If I were to say about something that went on in the American prison, and I say, well, listen, when they're handling murderers and rapists, they say, how dare you call them murderers and rapists? Like, all right, yes, of course, I know some people might not be murderers and rapists. So if you think that in some way you've got me, it's a silly point. And I'm happy to concede to you that there's
not remotely a silly
I'm happy
point.
I'm happy to apologize to anybody who actually believes this, that I will concede to you that some people there are innocent, some people are there for bullshit crimes, some people are terrorists, and some people are Hamas.
First of all, I'm very glad that you apologize because that's very big of you. And I mean that. But it's not.
Am I still an apologist? Am I still an apologist?
Yes.
All right. So
I'm glad you said that. I mean, you're literally apologizing.
What do you care? What do you care then? You obviously don't believe it.
I believe your apology and I respect it.
Well, how can if I apologize, why would I be an apologist? I mean, if you believe my apology, then it's incompatible with thinking the things you said about me, right? Otherwise, you must think my apology is bullshit.
You spend this whole time trying to No. I believe your apology, but that specific thing about the terrorists. Now you're overanalyzing my accepting your apology.
Okay, whatever.
I believe you that you don't think they're all terrorists and that you got.
I think this Kristof article is a disgrace for the reasons that I said. It could be right about things. I'm sure it is right in partial thing. There are certain methods of that when you are dealing with something as radioactive as this. You need to be very, very precise. Obviously, the proper way to do it would be for the New York Times to engage the most extensive and formidable news gathering operation on planet Earth and set 50 reporters to look into this as thoroughly as possible, because this is not a minor thing to get wrong. This is
Okay.
that's on its face an outrage. But if they are going to do it to Kristof, and there are basic problems with the story, which a schmuck Nazi like me can uncover, but the editors of the New York Times didn't notice, it speaks for itself. And all you would need to do, all that would need to happen for you to understand, is for an article to go in the opposite direction, and you'd be crying every single thing that I've said. I'm done. You can have the last word. Go. I sound like Bill O'Reilly.
Okay,
The last
awesome.
word.
So first of all, I want to talk about this whole idea that there are some innocent people in these camps. There are 10,000 detainees right now in Israeli custody. Among them, about 300 are going to be prosecuted. The rest are, I'm talking about since October 7th. That's 300 out of 10,000. That is a very small portion. Now, I'm sure there's other people who are involved in things, but a lot of them were involved in nothing, most likely the absolute vast majority. And Israel is releasing some of them and killing others. And they even released a person, like you said, who had evidence of that rape case because there was no evidence against them. Now, regarding the story, the role of an opinion story like this is to create a conversation around something. And it certainly did that. The reason you can't properly investigate what's happening in Israeli prisons is because Israel absolutely will not open up these prisons to journalists, will not allow journalists to ask questions of inmates, of guards. They have a lot to hide. There's no way to do a proper investigation. And the proper response to this column would have been to say, well, we don't know if everything here is true, like you said, which is fine, but it's incumbent on Israel to be transparent and open up the prisons, and so we can see what's actually happening there, because there's a lot of indication that what's happening there is awful. Instead, people like you, and this is why I continue to call you an apologist, have gone and tried to find any weakness in the story and untangle it. And there's weaknesses in the story because Israel will not open its facilities because it's committing horrific crimes against humanity. And that is the important story. Not Rami Abdul, not me, not Nick Kristof. What the real story are the crimes that are being committed in the dark in these prisons where Israel's not opening them up to international monitors and to the media, just like they didn't open up Gaza. They have a lot to hide. And when we do see things like in the video we saw today of how they treated the members of the flotilla who came in, we see how awful and disgusting they are. And that's the real thing that people need to focus on. Any minute spent trying to disentangle and besmirch people who are uncovering these crimes is giving comfort and aid to the Nazis of our day, to the genocidal state of Israel that is committing horrific crimes against humanity. And if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Okay. By the way, I'm not going to contradict anything you said. Did you see, I'm going to send you a study by a guy at Harvard that came out, my name, Jesus fucking Christ, I can't remember his name. But they're uncovering a lot of the Hamas documents and stuff now. And the full extent of their plan, I'm going to shock you. There was no document which talked about, if we put this pressure and that pressure and we show Israel, blah, 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 then they will finally agree to a two-state solution. It was so steeped in the I won't use the word genocide, but so steeped in the destruction of Israel as a goal. It makes me very, very pessimistic about the future. And, that's just it. Like I really was very sad to read what I was reading. Oh, and the other thing it talked about was this kind of Netanyahu propped up Hamas, that thing we've heard for 3 years now. According to this article, no, actually, this was an informal agreement that was brokered by the Egyptians, where essentially Israel agreed to kind of let Hamas fill its coffers in return for standing down a little bit. And that's why Israel looked the other way and even facilitated the Qatari payments. I'll send you the article, and then if you want to dispute it, you can. Sobelman, that's the guy's name. Sobelman. You can come on the show again.
There's nothing to dispute. Israel and Hamas are partners in continuing this conflict and have been for decades. Israel is currently keeping Hamas in power. They only have a few people left in some little corner of Gaza. Israel's letting them thrive there. Why? Because it gives them an excuse to continue building settlements, continue ethnic cleansing, continue the genocide. Hamas enjoys the protection of Israel. They kill their leadership, but allow them to stay in power. This is all mediated by Qatar, mediated by Egypt. They all have fingers in the pie of the money that's gone between side to side. This is reality.
Okay, so your point is that, and we have to go. Your point is that actually Israel could have taken out Hamas, but they chose not to?
Of course. Easily. All you had to do is take over all of Gaza. Israel never took over all of Gaza.
So Israel should have.
What do you do when you want to defeat? What do you want to do when you defeat an enemy? You take. Did the United States and the Soviet Union leave Berlin and leave Hitler there?
So
if it's such a big threat, no, you go in and you take it over.
So your advice would have been for Israel to reoccupy Gaza, and you'd be here defending Israel today if they did so.
That's what I advocated when I was a Zionist, because
I'm talking about now. I'm talking about now. You think Israel should go in and reoccupy Gaza?
What I would advocate right now is to make a deal transferring Gaza to the Palestinian Authority. That's what I would advocate now. That deal is on the table.
But we know from the Chicago polls that if there's ever an election in the Palestinian in the West Bank, Hamas is going to get elected there too. We know this.
So why have elections?
What? Point is that Hamas can take over with a coup. They took over with a coup in Gaza. Why won't they take the West Bank in a coup?
Hamas are in charge now. Why you're worried about a coup once they're taken out of power? Worry about that once you've taken them out of power.
So you're saying Israel's keeping Hamas in power. You're criticizing them for that.
Yes.
But then you say they should transfer Gaza to the PA, and maybe they'll take over there, and then presumably Israel should then reoccupy everything because you can't have Hamas in power.
No. Okay. You put the PA
we have to
with international support.
Will you come on again?
Back in charge.
We have to go.
Yeah,
we have another guest. We have another guest back up.
And again, I apologize.
You can't keep apologizing and then call me the same thing 5 minutes later.
I apologize.
Unlike you, I don't accept your apology.
Not for calling you an apology.
I don't care what you call me. I don't accept your apology. Okay, but I'm not mad at you.
I don't accept your lack of acceptance of my apology.
I said I don't accept your apology. That's my.
I know, and I don't accept your lack of acceptance.
That's my superpower is that I don't care. You can call me those names, and I'll still break bread with you. Okay.
You called me things too, and I'm not mad at you. So I hope we.
I just called you stupid.
No, you called me a disgrace, but that's fine.
I'm kidding.
That's fine.
Okay.
I have to say I've never had such a contentious interview.
It was about time you did. That's because people
are. It's a long time.
Neither did Omar Bartov. That's because people are kissing the ass rather than giving interviews like they should.
No, I've had some pretty contentious ones, but not this contentious.
Well, that's
but
good.
Still, I respect you, and I'm glad that we did.
There were no gotcha questions, that's for sure. Okay, sir.
And I'll be happy to come on again.
Okay, and I'm going to send you that paper. Shael Ben-Ephraim. Say it properly.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Shael Ben-Ephraim, if you want to say it in Hebrew. Yeah.
Lahitrot.
Lahitrot.
We gotta go. That's where we have to go to.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Live from the Table. Steve, cut the music for now because it's too jolly. We're gonna do a show today. Everybody's aware, obviously, of the recent Nick Kristof column in the Times. I'd been not pleased with the kind of generic response by the pro-Israel people who have just claimed that the most horrible of the accusations, of canine rape, that it was simply impossible. I don't like those kind of alibis unless they're really sure it's simply impossible. So I've begun to do some looking into it. I'm not convinced it's impossible.
I'm pretty convinced that I don't believe the story, but those are two separate issues altogether. So anyway, so I asked Periel to find the leading experts on this topic in the world, and we have one today. We're going to have one on Wednesday. We're going to compile them. Today, we are going to interview Dr. Daniel Mills. Dr. Mills is a professor. Hello. Dr. Mills is a professor of veterinary behavioral medicine at the University of Lincoln. Professor Mills is an international authority on companion animal behavior, cognition, and welfare. He was the UK's first specialist in veterinary behavioral medicine to be recognized by the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons and was in the top 1% of cited scientists globally, according to Stanford University's research database. And I believe I also saw somewhere that you're an expert in dog pheromones. So welcome to the show. And is that correct?
Yeah, but not so much sex pheromones, but yeah, understanding how pheromones work in cats and dogs, particularly, some of the commercial products that are designed to reduce their stress. But yeah, I do understand that area.
I see. All right. So before, people are going to want to know this, it needs to be asked. Are you associated with any strong political leanings one way or another? Are you a rabid Zionist, a rabid anti-Zionist, anything?
No, I think I'll keep it simple. No.
Yeah, no one's gonna come and say, "What? You believe this guy? Didn't you see his tweet where he was, screaming about genocide or not genocide?"
I obviously do not like what's going on. I think you have to distinguish between the Israeli government and the Israeli people.
Okay.
And in no shape or form, do I want to promote anti-Semitic ideas in the same way as I do not wish to promote anti-Islamic ideas as well. I have friends in both camps.
Okay. All right. So let's just get right to the heart of the matter. Is this sort of thing, in your estimation, possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible. As you say, I don't want to comment on the report. I haven't actually been able to access it in this country. I think it's behind a paywall. But I think it is perfectly possible to train an animal to assault a person sexually, and especially if that person is restrained, and positioned in such a way. I see no reason why that shouldn't be possible.
No, what based on how you're bringing your expertise to bear on that opinion? I mean, I know we see circus animals do all sorts of things, but this would, in my layman's understanding, it requires the dog to become sexually excited.
Yeah,
that's difficult to train even a human to do, right?
There are associations, and so you could train an animal by pairing, certain stimuli. And, by stimuli, it could be a visual signal, okay? And you could sexually arouse the dog. So, I'm a veterinarian as well. And in veterinary work, sometimes if you work in reproduction, then you have to take a semen sample from a dog. And so it's very easy to sexually arouse a dog.
It's easy to sexually arouse a dog?
Yeah, I mean, you just pull back the sheath and, you stimulate the penis and the dog will eventually ejaculate if you are persistent enough. Most dogs can be trained to do that.
So why have I seen so many articles of other experts saying that they felt it was impossible to train a dog?
I don't know. I don't know what their expertise is. But, if you were to pair that reliably and then and you could use something like a chemical marker, it wouldn't have to be a pheromone, and you associate that smell, and then you put that odor on the person's back and they're restrained, in such a position that it's possible for the dog then to mount the individual. And I think it would be possible.
Now, let me just say, I had no idea which way you were going to go in this interview. I didn't know whether you'd say it was possible or not possible. Periel, are you there? Did you know, Periel?
I've had very little, actually, I should point out, I've had very little correspondence. When you initially reached out, you gave me no idea of what it was about. Right. And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I decided when I found out what it was about, I think it is an important issue that needs to be discussed. And I didn't want, somebody seeking a bit of publicity
to
reach out and just say something off the wall. I'm trying to give you an honest academic opinion here. So yeah,
yeah, I had no idea what Dr. Mills was going to say.
I say that only because, generally we do know what the guest is going to say, and sometimes we choose the guest because we want a particular opinion, right? No shame in that.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, this is just merely me investigating. I put into ChatGPT who were the leading experts in the world who would know something about this. It generated a name of like, I don't know, 5 or 6 of the golden circle, and you were one of them. So now you say about putting something in somebody's back. This is disturbing because there is one interview. It's the only interview I've actually seen with someone who purports to be a witness, and they report that I'll cut it in here afterwards, but they report that the guards took the guy's pants down, held him down, and then the captain, I think it was the captain, came over and sprayed something on the prisoner's back. And this was really where I began to get nervous. I'm like, why? It seemed like such a strange and subtle detail for a witness to recount, that something was sprayed on the guy's back. And he didn't say sprayed on the back, to attract the dog. As if, in other words, it wasn't like he seemed coached to say it. It seemed almost as if, now he could just be an evil genius. It seemed almost as if he didn't even really understand what he was seeing, but and then they sprayed something on him, and then this happened. So with that, that seems to be what you just said.
Yeah, and I wasn't aware of that at all. And again, if you wanted to do this, and I'm not in any shape or form, nobody should do this. Okay, this I've got to make absolutely clear. Just before I came on, I did point out that this topic, sexual abuse involving animals, comes under the same pornography rules as sexual abuse of children. So just because I'm talking about it, I'm in no way condoning it. I have to get those caveats in. I think that's important. But, I said about using a chemical marker, that was assuming that, I wasn't going to use a sexual pheromone. When bitches are in season, they produce chemicals that sexually attract males. You can synthesize that. You can take it from bitches in season. And if you do that, then, it's quite... Yeah, I reckon it's fairly straightforward, probably, then, to get a dog to do that.
Because just if we can veer off your expertise, just in kind of, how you take something like this in, and you try to make sense whether you believe it or not. The idea of training the dog, even when you tell me it's possible, seems very far-fetched to me, because it requires a program. It requires a bureaucratic decision to hire a dog trainer, to train him. It takes a process. You have to. There's obviously, I don't know how they with dummies. Who knows how they train animals, and this would have to be some rogue-like operation. The Israeli government is not going to hire dog trainers to and have a program of dog rape. That's just too outlandish for me to believe. A shortcut, which would involve a spray of something, that's a lot easier for me to believe. Is it true that a training process? Because I did some reading about like how long it takes to train dogs to do various tricks, and it can take months sometimes to train dogs to do things that they don't like. Give your paw, because that's a natural behavior. But other things that are not natural.
Sorry, but mounting and ejaculating is a natural behavior for a dog.
But
just putting it on.
But not on a human, right?
But they're not thinking about it in that way. So if they are sexually aroused,
but you can't. But you said you could sexually arouse a dog through manual stimulation, but that's not
that's one way,
right? But training the dog to become sexually aroused, that seems like a tall order, no?
Not really. I mean, you talked about dummies. It's done with horses a lot of the time. In the collection of artificial insemination, it's done with dogs as well. The collection of artificial insemination. So
But that's not training. That's not training.
No. So, but if you do that, you just have to pair it with a stimulus. And, you can, through a reliable association, this predicts this. It's back to Pavlov's dogs. You probably have heard of Pavlov's dogs,
I'm not sure
You ring a bell.
I'm not sure Periel has, but yes, I have.
Okay. So, I mean, Pavlov was a Russian physiologist, and he, trained dogs to salivate to the sound of a metronome, a
Right.
buzzer. And, basically what he noticed originally was that when the dogs were, a technician would come and feed the dogs. And he was, as I said, he was a physiologist first and foremost. And he was interested in the flow of saliva and gastric juices. And what he noticed, he gave the dogs food and he collected the saliva. He put a little cannula, in the neck in order to gather the saliva. And what he noticed was that after a while, when certain technicians went by, then the dogs started to produce saliva as if they were about to be given food. And so that's what we call classical conditioning. That's the association between something that is neutral with something that has a natural response.
Right.
And that's what, as I said, that's classical conditioning.
Yeah.
So you pair something frequently enough, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, and your brain makes the association that this predicts that this. Yeah.
Right.
And that is independent of the consequences of the action.
Right. I was kind of just teasing Periel, but so then, and I guess this would be the last thing I would ask you. Explain to me what the process would be of training a dog to become sexually aroused, and how long you think that would take.
You reliably pair a certain stimulus with sexual arousal, and then the dog
Right,
will.
but give me details. Like what would the stimulus
Well,
be?
it varies from task to task. I can't give you a figure, and to be honest, I don't really want to go into great detail as to how I would do it because, I've probably already said enough. But it is a relatively straightforward procedure. You could probably. I would not be surprised if you could do it in a day.
But you can't, this is fascinating for another reason, just the difference in political climates, where obviously there's an issue of worry here to discuss this for fear of prosecution. When obviously neither of us are trying to condone anything. We're trying to have a intellectual, detailed discussion about a matter of the utmost importance that is roiling the world right now. And I'm trying to investigate it. And I'm speaking to one of the experts in the world to say, well, how would you go about doing this? And he can't tell me. And this ought to tell every American why we're fortunate to have our free speech laws in this country. It's astounding to me that a scientific discussion like this is out of order, but I guess it is.
Can I just jump in there?
Of course.
I don't want to discuss it in any great detail because there are people, unfortunately, that are, shall we say, not mentally healthy, and they could take the information, and there is a danger when you discuss these things that people start to get other ideas, and I do not wish to be complicit in that, the promotion of I consider a very serious crime. That's the only reason for me not wanting to discuss the details in further. As I said, I think from a scientific point of view, I think it is a relatively straightforward procedure to do. And I cannot think of any scientific reason why it should not be relatively straightforward to do.
I apologize. I was projecting from what we said earlier about the worry about saying anything that could cross the line with UK laws here. All right. Well, that's frustrating for me. I understand. Fair enough. You don't want. It's easy to build an atom bomb. Oh, really? How would you build an atom bomb? I don't want to tell you. Yeah, I understand that logic. On the other hand, it's still like you can't show a dog pictures. Without. Well, let me ask you this: do you think you could do that training without chemical stimulants?
Yes, I think I could, because if I was to pair a a visual image. It's a lot easier with stimulants. As I said, you don't really need a dog trainer then.
Right.
And but you would be able to, it's all about something. Your brain is constantly making associations of what predicts what. So, if I drop a ball, you expect it to go down because your brains are constantly making those predictions about their experience. So if you pair, let's just say a tone, I don't know, the note C on a piano, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then you manually stimulate a dog, you will find after a period of time that when you play C, that the dog will have an erection.
Yeah.
And once the dog has got an erection, it may well then, and if you manually stimulate the dog to the point of ejaculation, you show it opportunities where it can ejaculate, then it will seek out those opportunities.
May I ask a question? How long does this last for? I mean, perhaps this is incredibly naive, but having no knowledge of any of this, like how long would a dog stay aroused for in order to have to penetrate another dog? I'm assuming it doesn't matter what it's penetrating, that time frame would be consistent.
So, I mean, it's a dog reproduction or dog sexual behavior it's very quite different to humans because actually the erection doesn't fully take place until the male dog penetrates the female. The male dog penis has a glans on it, which is sort of a vascular structure that swells to about the size of an orange. And that's called creating a tie. So when a dog mounts a dog, the male dog initially penetrates, and then the penis fully engorges, and and then the male is tied to the female. He then usually lifts his back leg over, and they're looking in different directions. And so the penis is deflected caudally, so they're bum to bum, if you like. And that tie can last for quite a long time. It will vary from dog to dog. Often, and it is very difficult. And certainly, this is the sort of thing that can happen if the female sees a fox or something that it wants to chase after. She will chase after it in a tie, and the male dog has to run backwards very quickly. He is still tied. Eventually, she may release him in that situation. So this is also why assault by a dog is particularly damaging because, as I said, the nature of the penis and the potential damage that it could do. And especially if the male dog was engorged and you pull the dog off, then you're clearly obviously going to increase the damage in any assault in that situation.
All right, and then I guess the final. I sent you 2 PDFs of scientific literature. One, of course, in our I don't know if it's bigotry, but when something comes from Uruguay, I wonder if it's as reliable as from a European or country or America. But there's 2 studies there. There's disturbing photographs that both, which seem these were with kids, both show that they were penetrated by dogs. One seems to read that there was a boy who brought it about, who wanted it to happen, and the other was a 6-year-old girl who couldn't have possibly wanted it to happen, but somehow was playing with a dog and found herself in that situation. Am I describing those correctly, and do you find those reliable?
So the first thing I would say is I think it's irrelevant what country they come from. These are peer-reviewed journals, so those papers will have been reviewed by other clinicians who will have accepted it and will have been satisfied that it is a true account. So I don't think you should be discriminating against nations where people have reported it.
I said it was bigotry. I said it was my bigotry.
I'd agree with you. It is bigotry.
Let me just
moving on.
Let me just. I'm going to let you. I'm not going to prevent you from speaking. Also, in the back of my mind, just going to that is that in a different part of the world, the shame
of such a thing could be so great, including the Muslim world, that the stories could be bent as well. And it just makes me like, oh, but go ahead.
But these are peer-reviewed scientific journals. These are, documenting a very rare thing that does that seems to have occurred.
Okay.
So I think it's reasonable to accept them, and that's what the scientific literature is there for. In the case of the girl, they said that there was no. Well, you said that she couldn't possibly want it in the discussion. They do talk about the possibility that at that age there could be a curiosity about the genitalia that could have led to it, and she could have inadvertently done it. And I'm not saying that in either case that it was overtly sought after, but people go, as people mature, they are inquisitive about their sexuality and their sexual organs. The brain, when we're first born, has other priorities.
By the way, I would say even the way these journals are written, and I wasn't doubting the journals, but even the way the journals are written, they even show a reluctance to speak perfectly frankly about it. So they use words like, well, the boy later admitted he was curious, but they don't actually say the boy later admitted that he, facilitated the penetration. So we're even after reading these vaunted peer-reviewed journals, a reasonable person cannot walk away from them and feel that they know precisely what's being described. And that's along the lines of what I'm saying. There's something I think wrong.
Yeah, but
there.
I think the purpose of the report is different to that. It's not to document, that a child how did the child manage to achieve that, or suffer that. It's more to say that this does occur because there is a lot of sexual abuse that occurs to young children. And, I think part of the point of those articles is to document the fact that the family pet could possibly be involved, whether or not and
that the uncle shouldn't be suspected, that the uncle is telling the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So I think it's as much that to say that we need to be aware, because you may or may not be aware. Many years ago, there was a lot of accusations, and then they realized that the tests that were done on children was not reliable. Yeah. I think it's alluded to in those articles as well, if a child's, I think, anal sphincter responds to certain things in certain ways, then they said, oh, well, that's clear evidence that they've been sexually assaulted. And, children were being taken away from their parents when nothing like that had happened.
Right.
And there's a big distinction between, somebody coercing an animal to make an assault on a, or another individual to make an assault on a child, and it happening. And I'm not in any shape or form saying that, the child desires it in any of those cases. And I don't think that in the articles they indicated that it was something that the child desired. It was inadvertent. I think in the case of the boy, he was alone with the dog, and he phoned the emergency services. And I will recount to you a story. Well, no, I won't actually. We don't need to go there. But
sure, because this is very important stuff.
Okay, well, people who are abused themselves, may well, that the way that their brain develops, it develops in an obscure way as a result of that abuse. So I have had clients where, I have good grounds to suspect that as a female client, she thought that the only way to reinforce a male dog was through some sort of sexual act with the dog. And I'm not saying that necessarily involved penetration. And almost certainly, I would assume that she, because she had been in abusive relationship with males, that seemed to be the only thing they were interested in from her. So she wanted a close relationship for her dog. She had to sexually stimulate the dog. This happens.
Jesus Christ. All right, sir. Anything else you want to add to that? I mean, so if I'm going to go by what you're saying, I would say that Israel needs to include in their denial here much more details of their procedures in the prisons, the procedure, if it's true, if what I'm saying is
going to be true, that there's no opportunity, that there's cameras everywhere, whatever they need to show circumstantially to cast doubt on this idea that, well, I couldn't have committed the murder because I was in Uruguay at the time. That's not going to, meaning the idea that it's impossible, is not really, I don't think it's going to fly here. From what you're saying, it's not impossible.
I'm not here to defend anyone, but I do not think to say something is impossible is a defense in this particular case. And
but you've gone further. You've gone further. You're not only saying it's not impossible. Something could be extremely, extremely unlikely and hard, but not impossible. You're saying it's actually, you don't think it'd be even that challenging to do.
No.
Yeah.
And it depends what degree of reliability you want. But if you just want it occasionally, it's not. I don't think it would be difficult to do.
Yeah.
If you understand learning theory, if you understand a bit of dog physiology, as I said, you could probably use the, again, when you train animals to dummies, you often use the urine from a bitch or the female in estrus. You spray it on it because that's sufficient to get the dog to jump onto a tube or whatever and to penetrate it. So, what is there that is difficult in this act? I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but you explain to me what you think is difficult in this process.
No, no, I don't. I don't know. I have no expertise.
No.
My opinion is meaningless either way, because it could seem easy to me, and somebody say, "What are you, an idiot? That's not the way it works." Or,
I mean, my opinion might be meaningless, but I have one, and having no expertise has never prohibited me from. So why start now? All of this of being able to stimulate the dog or have it be aroused seems feasible, and I am following all of it. But the actual penetration part seems really far-fetched to me, because I think that you need, I can't really understand physiologically.
But Periel, you saw the two academic papers. What more do you need to know that the penetration is possible?
But that doesn't mean that it is, it's sounding like it's quite easy to do. Like the fact that things happen,
well, the guards have their way with these, presumably, in this scenario, the guards have their way with these soldiers that can position them however they like. What's interesting to me about this story with the 6-year-old is that she's only 6 years old. I think it was a Labrador. Like, she would get tossed around, like, for her to put up the reversed pressure to allow what we're talking about to happen would require maybe some strength if the dog wasn't grabbing onto her. I shudder to think what went on there. But we talking about a grown man and guards. It's
just so awful.
Way easier to imagine than a 6-year-old, right?
I don't know. It's so awful that maybe that's also why it's difficult for me to conceive of. But okay.
Can I just ask Periel, because you raised the point, now maybe you've answered it in that last comment. Is the issue that you have with the penetration, is it because it's morally repulsive and that somebody would do that? Because the dogs aren't thinking morally.
No, I know that.
They're sexually aroused. They're looking for an opportunity, and evolution works with simple rules that, if you're a dog and there's a bitch in season, you're attracted to them. And with the chemicals, dogs don't have to learn how to have sex.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm definitely not blaming the dogs.
No, but you then, you mount the bitch and you thrust with your hips, and the idea, and if the tip of the penis ends up in a hole, you keep thrusting. Mm-hmm. Now, usually that will be the vagina. It may be the anus, and dogs will do that, and the bitch will move herself in, because that's not what. She's not getting the feedback. Mm-hmm. So, it really doesn't matter to the dog from a biological point of view where its penis goes. The reinforcement comes from the ejaculation and the stimulation.
Awful. It's just awful.
So, sir, I appreciate very much your time and your leap of faith. I hope that we treated the subject respectfully as you were worried about. My intention here is I'm going to interview another expert. We're going to interview Shai Ben-Ephraim, who knows something about the witnesses here. I'm going to do one podcast where I edit this all together, and I'm also going to release each interview in its entirety as well. So I hope that's okay with you. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Because I always hate editing things, but in this particular case, I don't want to do multiple 30, 45-minute interviews about this topic. I want to do an overview of various expert opinions on the topic. And I think what I'll also do, it just occurred to me now, is I'm going to send your interview to the next guy for him to comment on it, and maybe then also give him your email address in case he wants to. He may want to say something. You may want to respond to it. I want this to be as open as possible and as enlightening as possible and fair to everybody as possible. Kind of like peer review, right? So does that sound okay?
So just one thing I would like to also make clear, again, for the avoidance of doubt, I am not in any shape or form have any opinion as to whether or not the accounts are true. I do not know anything about that. I'm just answering the question of, can you train a dog to do this?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that there'd been a denial, that it was impossible, etc. I'm just saying that from a scientific point of view, to answer that question, I think it is very possible to do. You could train a dog, I don't know, to, mount your Coca-Cola bottle if you wanted. It's really, it's from a procedural level. And I don't want anyone to take this to say, well, I'm not forming an opinion on whether or not it has occurred. I'm just saying that it's technically possible.
I think we read you loud and clear. Okay, anything else you want to add? Otherwise, we're gonna let you go.
No.
We're gonna say cheerio.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much,
thank
sir.
you. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for squeezing
and
us
thank
in.
you for trusting us. I know you were worried about it. Thank you.
Oh, well, okay. Take care.
Bye.
Okay. Dr. James Crosby is a certified behavioral consultant and
I'm sorry, let me just say. So, as I said earlier, we did look into this dog issue, and we had Dr. Mills on earlier, and then who seemed to think it absolutely was possible. Then we sent the recording of Dr. Mills to Dr. Crosby, who I believe is going to tell us that he doesn't think it's possible. And so we're trying to air this out. These are two experts. I have a little fun chart that ChatGPT made for me to set them off against each other. I'll read it out loud. I think Dr. Crosby will enjoy it. But anyway, so Perry, I'll introduce dog expert number 2.
Dr. Crosby is a certified behavioral consultant and recognized expert in canine behavior. He is a retired police lieutenant and former Animal Control Division manager. He serves as research associate and lead investigator for the Canine Aggression Initiative at Harvard University's Department of Human Evolutionary Biology and has testified as an expert witness in multiple local, state, and federal courts. He teaches internationally on veterinary forensics, canine aggression, and dog bite investigations. Thank you very much for joining us.
Welcome, Dr. Crosby.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Steve.
All right, so let's get right to it, and then we'll take it from there. What's your take on this allegation of dogs being trained or otherwise to rape prisoners in Israel prison?
First thing I want to say is that we're doing an awful lot of work with the word possible. It's like I get in court on cases all the time, and attorneys say, well, isn't it possible that XYZ? Yeah, counselor, maybe that's possible. Alien abduction could be possible because I haven't seen it proved absolutely that it doesn't happen. And even the attorney questioned me. I'll say, it's possible you're not really an attorney, but is it likely? No, we're sitting in court here and we're looking at it. Now, I know Daniel. I actually wrote a couple chapters of a book for him a few years back. Is it possible these dogs were trained to perform this particular behavior? The possibility is out there. Is it likely? I don't think it's likely at all. What I think is most likely, and it's just as disturbing as if it really was that particular behavior, is that someone trained or is likely to have trained the dogs to take a posture, jump up on a person, move their hips back and forth as if they were having sex with the person in order to intimidate.
To terrorize them.
Yeah, exactly. That would be my feeling. And really, I mean, yes, it does matter, but whether the actual penetration and completing the act, so to speak, actually happened, I think it's going to be probably just as intimidating and insulting and degrading to the recipient of that behavior as if it really happened. We're talking about cultural issues here where my understanding, and I'm not completely up on it, but my understanding is that to some cultural groups, dogs are unclean, are considered not to be, perhaps as we consider them here in the United States. And that as such, that may really carry a lot more weight in the circumstance that this is being described in than it would here. Here it would be a problem. But you get over to the Middle East and with the cultural differences, it's like there are places where if you pick up your leg and cross your legs and expose the bottom of your foot, that's horribly insulting. And to do that, knowing that that would be potentially received by another person in that manner, is really unconscionable. I mean, you're deliberately trying to push people's buttons to get an intimidation or fear or disgust response.
Well, okay, I have a few questions, but and our last guest said something similar, that the penetration is kind of beside the point, a distinction without a difference. I strongly disagree with that. I understand the humiliation and the terror of thinking something like that is going to happen, but if it doesn't happen, I think it's quite different. You could terrorize me with the sound or the simulation of my child being tortured or something like that. But then, of course, if it doesn't happen, it matters. And, that's just...
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
It matters.
Yeah.
But in some ways, I think we're talking about a matter of degree. Either way, if for instance, somebody went through the motions and simulated abusing your child and it didn't happen, that doesn't mean that in the moment that you perceived that it wasn't as horrible as if it was really happening.
But it's still...
Yeah, absolutely. Because, the person's perception in the moment is what's going to stick with them the longest.
That part, but then also the physical torture of the penetration. So anyway, and the next thing is it's not quite, to me, the same thing as proving a negative like alien abduction, because we do have this small universe of academic literature that shows a certain number of children having been penetrated by dogs, which is why I think that it's possible. Why I know that it's possible, and these people are not bound and held. But let me, and you can also come back to that too. But let me ask you this: there is this interview, and I showed it before, where one of the witnesses describes the guard spraying something on the back of the person being tortured. And I immediately thought, well, that's a weird detail. What if they were spraying some sort of estrus scent? Would that trigger this? And could that then be kind of an easy way to short circuit this and make it happen? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible. As I think you found out in talking with Dr. Mills, pheromones, the scent of a receptive female, can be used very successfully to produce arousal in males.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it can happen. It could happen. I'm wondering how dedicated somebody would have to be to actually committing the actual act versus using just as discussing an action to try and create that feeling. I spent a bunch of years as a police officer, and it never fails to surprise me, but it never really does surprise me, the extent to which people will go to do depraved and horrible things to each other.
That's right.
But most bad guys are kind of on the lazy side.
Yeah,
So this is a hard one.
I don't believe that it
Not to-
happened. I think it's especially since I did a whole show about the sourcing of all this, but exactly what you just said, and then this is activated and amplified emotionally by the fact that there was mass rape on October 7th, that hostages are being held in Gaza by these same clique, and presumably, and we know now it's true, sexually abusing Israelis being held hostage. And, it's I'm told, I don't know if this is just a myth, but that they say pedophiles are the first victims of prison rape in prisons because apparently the inmates hate this, and so they give them a taste of their own medicine. This very base, an urge to give somebody a taste of their own medicine is what worries me.
Yeah, and I agree that would be a concern. And, the mythology around whether it's pedophiles in prison or the reports on either side or in other conflicts in the past, going back to, at least World War II, where different groups were accused of doing things to different people. The use of sexual intimidation is recognized and as unacceptable and actually not particularly uncommon in those kinds of situations. I mean, even the Vikings were alleged to have raped and pillaged as they went across Europe, and it's never acceptable. I wonder, however, if the reports are maybe being put out by one side or the other to try to either intensify the shame that the people who were being held experienced, or perhaps trying to build up a fear of this sort of action for anybody that gets grabbed in the future.
Right. And we don't know. That's and by the way, we're all victims of our own life experience. So as a owner of a business, too many times someone's accused an employee of mine of something. I'm like, they would never do that. And then I look at the camera, and motherfucker, he was doing that, right? So I have this kind of,
Yep.
but my first instinct now, whenever I hear an outlandish accusation, is like, hold on, let's get the security camera, let's see what we can learn, let's get objective evidence. And this is how I wound up in this situation. I just feel that the reflex of the pro-Israel camp, of which I am clearly a member of, to say, how dare you, we would never do such a thing and it's not possible, is not the best instinct, particularly as I showed before, when Lawrence Wright, the journalist, accused Egypt of doing it, nobody said that's impossible. When if Israeli hostages had come back and reported that kind of torture, we'd all be saying, and they raped our hostages with dogs. So the first thing is to be explain to us the system of the prison, explain to us how the cameras work, what logistically, let's figure this out. Like in the same way, the stand down order was, I knew that was bullshit, because the second you start to think about what would be involved in issuing a stand down order, which, goddamn it, I forgot to mention that Shael also was pro stand down order. Is you realize very quickly it's just not feasible. I would like to hear the circumstantial case as to why this would be very, very difficult, if not impossible, for an Israeli prison guard to do, let alone multiple prison guards to do. That's what I want to hear.
Well, in my view, there has to be a process. Sure, the humping behavior, if you want to call it that, in itself, that's easy to reinforce. Any behavior like that. A dog is going to do that naturally, not necessarily having anything to do with a sexual purpose. It's communication between two dogs. It has to do with social dominance within the species. You can reinforce that with cookies or whatever.
How long would it take?
Depends on the dog. You can teach a dog to sit with cookies in a matter of a few minutes to an hour. The situation that comes up is not whether you can get it once. You want to be able to get that behavior reliably and dependably on cue. I mean, if there was a person doing this, it'd kind of be counterproductive for them to say, okay, Fido, get him. And Fido looks up and rolls over and wants his belly rubbed. You want a reliable response. So I don't think it would take a huge amount of time, a day, a week. Depends on the dog, and it depends on the trainer. And that's something we in the field, we know that a lot depends on the trainer. To get the other aspects of the behavior, sure, if you sprayed a scent from a female in heat on the anticipated victim, that could get the dog aroused. I don't know how reliable that is. I'm not a reproductive vet, so I know that artificial insemination is done with dogs and cattle and sheep and horses and all kinds of stuff. I would be a little bit wondering on how good the dog's aim had to be to actually get successful penetration, and whether the spacing and whatever, that's something that I think that we'd have to ask somebody who's allegedly done it, how much there was to that. It's not an impossible issue. I said, sometimes we tend to make the word possible do a lot of very heavy lifting. Is it possible? Well, for instance, before World War II, there were a lot of things that happened to people during that time that people would have said, oh, that's impossible. Nobody's going to send people into a big room with shower heads and gas them and kill them, or line them up and do the horrible things that were done. Anything is possible if you're depraved enough. And dedicated enough.
I thought of this, and of course I forgot to say it elsewhere, but yes, the aim issue, as it were, that is missing from this testimony that I played. In other words, it said then the dog just went over and did it. No, you would probably need the guards to hold the guy and facilitate it and to line it up. And
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think that there would have to be somebody actually putting the functional parts in the right arrangement.
Yeah, I should have asked Dr. Mills about that. Maybe
not impossible,
yeah.
but that presupposes a little bit more hands-on personal involvement on the part of the dog handler.
And it would have been part of the narrative of what the guy expressed that he saw. In other words, the least likely is that the dog just ran over and did it, and it just worked out. More likely is that the dog ran over, and then the humans were involved in it somehow.
But also think that using it as intimidation behavior, getting just a reasonable facsimile of the behavior for a lot of people would probably be enough.
Yeah. Well, a good friend of mine referred to this article as the product of a useful idiot. And I do feel that way about the article in general. I'm sorry that I got stuck on this particular issue, even though this is the issue everybody's talking about. But it is what it is. You know, I don't apologize for wanting to get to the bottom of it. I wish that so many people hadn't just rejected it out of hand as something that's impossible, because that just gets me going. So I got two more things for you before you go.
Sure.
The first thing is, this is completely unrelated. I read something that always amazes me, that dog breeds are ranked as how intelligent they are compared to other dog breeds by how many repetitions it takes before they reliably learn a command. And what I heard was something like a poodle, or a border collie, one of the very smartest dog breeds, can learn a command in 1 to 3 repetitions, sometimes even 1. And you say, okay, that's the smartest breed. But the least smart breed, you know, I'm so woke, I don't want to call them dumb, right? The least smart breed, it's not like 10 times, 15 times. I think it was a bulldog was one of them. It's 100 times. Now, the difference between the smartest breed and the dumbest breed is 100 repetitions, like thick-headedness. Is that really true? Is that your experience?
I think that that between individuals, absolutely true. I don't think that there's per se a smartest breed.
Mm-hmm.
You get individuals that are smart. For instance, look at the political situation around the world with humans. Some politicians are pretty damn bright and pick things up the first time. Other politicians wouldn't be able to find their rear end with a map and a flashlight in a phone booth. So,
But how
the
much
other thing is
smarter?
that
How much smarter is the smartest dog than the dumbest dog? Like, what can the smartest dog actually do that's meaningfully different than the dumbest dog?
Well, I think that the 100-fold difference would be easily within credible range. There was a dog, and I don't remember his name right now, but there was a dog that
I hope he's not listening.
recently passed away.
I
recently
saw that.
passed away.
I saw that video.
That had 1,000 toys.
That's right.
Of different types and colors and so forth. And his owner could tell him to go over to a huge pile and dig out the pink fuzzy caterpillar. And the dog could run over there and do it.
That's right. That was that was remarkable. However, it bears being mentioned that his owner spent from every waking moment for years, all day long, teaching the dog these tasks, right?
Yeah, he did. But, you know, I've had dogs that, for instance, I would have to work every waking moment for years trying to teach them to simply not run into the sliding glass door.
I do that all the time. Okay,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. I mean, even with a sticker on it, the dog just couldn't figure out that meant don't run through the sliding glass door.
All right. So before you go, so I don't know if it's interesting to you or not. If it bothers you, I won't put it in the interview. But ChatGPT ranks you, James Crosby versus Daniel Mills, as a kind of clash of the titans. Do you want to hear how you guys came out? Are you curious?
Yeah, and I'm also interested to hear who else the GPT threw in us, because, like I said, I know Daniel. We agree on an awful lot of stuff, and I actually wrote a couple of chapters for a textbook on dog bites for him a couple of years ago, and he and I both look into fatal attacks on humans by dogs.
Well, I only compared the two of you. Category: main strength, Daniel Mills, canine behavior, science, learning theory, emotion, welfare, veterinary behavioral medicine. James Crosby, police canine practice, dangerous dog assessment, forensic dog behavior, and expert witness work. Who ranks high in specific authority. He's very high. You are very high, but less central academically, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
Operational canine relevance. He's moderate to high. You are very high. Forensic legal relevance, he's moderate, you're very high. Prison security dog plausibility. Strong on, Mills is strong on whether the behavior makes biological sense. Crosby is strong on whether it makes real world sense and canine handling sense. So you get the nod there, which is maybe, where we're at. Sexual behavior, arousal analysis. He's very strong, you're strong. All right, and if for best use in this allegation, dun 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 dun, it rates you a tie.
Well, that's good. And it doesn't surprise me. Daniel has spent an entire career in academia. So it does not surprise me that he would be much higher in that. He's been a professor for many years. I took a side trip first for the first 23 years of my professional career as a police officer, and then got into all this stuff. So yeah, that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, it's amazing what ChatGPT knows and doesn't know. Okay, well
Wait, I have one question, if you don't mind. So do you have a pet? Do you have a dog for a pet?
I have 3 of them underfoot right now.
And what breed are they? What did you pick as the what's the best dog?
Good question.
Thank you.
My breed is what's called a curly-coated retriever. They're an old retrieving breed that originated in the UK 300-400 years ago. They're the ancestors to the flatcoats and the golden retrievers and the Labrador retrievers and the Chesapeake Bay retrievers. And I have 2 of those. And I also have living here my younger daughter's evil little miniature dachshund.
All right.
That's great.
I have 2 poodles, and boy, I mean, I don't want to be racist, but they are smart. Okay, like they are. I mean,
they are
amazing what
my
they
wife
know.
My wife had standard poodles when I first met her 36 years ago, and believe it or not, poodles are really great hunting retrievers.
Oh, tell me about it. But my dogs brought home a headless rabbit. And they brought it to us. I presented it to us, like bleeding headless corpse of a rabbit. It was awful.
Well, they thought you were special. They just wanted to give you something to remember them by.
I do have one last question. We should do a whole dog episode. I hope people don't find this offensive in the doing this very serious topic. Our dog Beacon, the smaller of the poodles, every time the dog loves me, and it tolerates my wife. And every time we leave the bed, if the dog can get on the bed, he pees on my wife's side of the bed. Is that meaningful?
It is sort of an editorial comment.
It is.
Now, whether he's trying to mark her and claim her as his because he knows he already owns your butt, could be. Or it just maybe, like I said, maybe an editorial comment. Maybe he's still mad that she was a little too slow with the milk bones.
Yeah, and he has another problem. I think he's a little bit, and I use the term clinically, I think he's a little retarded because he had this thing where he lost a lot of weight, and then he kind of gained the weight back, but he started this growling. You've seen this growling behavior, and now whenever he comes next to you, he curls right with you, and then you pet him, and he says, "Arr, arr," and it's really growling. Mm-hmm. And then if you stop petting him, he's he obviously wants you to pet him some more. What's that?
All right. Well, dogs talk. I had a dog that I trained and worked with for several years, and that if you stood with your back to him and he was happy, it would sound to an unfamiliar person like this was a grizzly bear that was about to rip the back of your head off and pee in the hole. But Bear just spoke. It's like some dogs smile.
Yeah.
Some dogs grumble. You've got to watch the whole picture of the body language before you can get a good idea as to what the dog is doing. And if your dog reinitiates the petting, even when you stop, even though he's growling, that's talking.
they are an amazing. Like, I'm not religious, but if you ever raised puppies, like within like 2 weeks or something, maybe I remember, but very, very early on, as soon as the human walks into the room, these little puppies start wagging their tail. It's as if they were put on Earth to be attached to humans. It's just a remarkable thing. Or they were bred that way, I guess.
Well, for some place in excess of the last 40,000 years, dogs and humans have lived occupying mostly the same spaces. And we are, put it this way, that is the only primary animal that we share our space with quite as intimately as we do. Yes, we have cats and they tolerate us. And yes, I know people love cats. Don't send me nasty emails. But we don't have lions and tigers and bears in our homes, if we have any sense. So, there's millennia of relationship between us and dogs. That's why my work I find so interesting as to how does that multi-millennial long relationship go so sour that a dog from time to time kills a human.
All right, we have to go. I would like to have you on to do a whole dog show sometime. One of the issues for that show will be, and we've all seen this, people, and I don't, the vets are not blameless here. Over and over, I know people spending tens of thousands of dollars, money they don't have, on treatments for dogs who then end up dying weeks later. And to know when not to do that is an interesting. We need rules of thumb on that, Maybe you do want to answer that.
We have a rule of thumb. We'll spend a house payment.
What's what?
He said they have a rule of thumb. They'll spend one house
house payment. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for my human children, obviously you're going to do what you have to do because the little suckers know how to call Child Protective Services. but for the dogs, our general rule of thumb is a house payment, which I think is just for me is something I can cough up an extra house payment if I absolutely have to. So
what about for the dachshunds? Half a house payment?
Nah, we don't discriminate based on perceived size. And I say perceived because she thinks she's bigger than the 85-pound curlies.
For the cost of my house payment, for the cost of my house payment, I'm going to give my dog a Brazilian butt lift and a heart transplant and dialysis.
Well, there you go. Obviously, your house.
No, I'm kidding. No, actually, I'm kidding. That's a good rule of thumb. One house payment. All right, sir. So I guess Periel, if very quickly you can send this segment to Dr. Mills. If anybody wants to email me any comments on the things, I'll cut them into the show. I wish I could have had you both on together. That would have been even better. But we weren't able to do that. But we want to make sure that we're very, very fair about this discussion. So we really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you, Dr. Crosby.
Sure.
And when you're in New York, come visit us.
Yes, please come visit us.
Next time I'm up in the city, I'll have to.
I assume you
get
you have
there from time to time.
I assume you have a service dog certificate. It's a racket. Everybody has one now.
Actually, quick thing. I was involved in a court case where a dog was being declared dangerous and the other side was trying to say, oh, it's my service dog. So I took and registered one of my personal dogs, who at that point was 8 weeks old, and got a certificate saying that this was a working service dog. Yeah. I'm sorry, but at that age and at that time, he couldn't find his way out of the kitchen without a leash on.
It's easier than becoming a genocide scholar.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost as easy as becoming the president of a Western country.
All right, you're a delight. Thank you very much, Dr. Crosby. See you later.
Sure. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Stephen, let me just say a few things okay, go ahead. Yeah. I would say a few things to the camera to cut in later. Go for it. Yeah, so I just want to say that, what was I? All right, so we interviewed Dr. Daniel Mills, and we interviewed Dr. Stephen Crosby.
James.
Oh, let's do it again.
Start over.
So it's James Crosby.
James Crosby.
Yeah. So we interviewed Dr. Daniel Mills and Dr. James Crosby, two dog experts, one of whom thinks it's quite possible, one of whom is much more skeptical that something like this could have happened. So I'm going to play a little bit of those interviews now, edited. In the show notes, I'm going to put links to both interviews in full. So if anybody wants to take a deeper dive into the dog experts, they can do so. Okay.
Separately.
No. Are we rolling? Yeah. Okay. Do you want to? So we're here. This is a post. We're having a post.
You gotta move this stuff. You cannot have this.
All right. Okay, Mom. We're having a post-show discussion, and Grossman is here, who actually facilitated the conversation between me and Shael, and he's taking me to task. He thinks I'm.
I'll have a conversation.
Well, hold on. Nobody. You have to talk on the mic if you want to talk. And you take me to task for various things I did, but you said just at the end, and this is why I wanted to chime back in, that he says that his part about the reliance upon him, upon Shael, was only like 5% of Kristof's case, and then the reliance on the Rami Abdu is another probably small percentage, right? And you said wrongly that I think it's 80%. I never said I think it's 80%, but I wanted to make this point to you. You only get glimpses of the tip of an iceberg. We don't have the ability to access those 14 cases or everyone that Kristof spoke to. If we did, I certainly would ask them to get on. We have access to information about only 2. And from those 2, we glean what are Kristof's standards? How much inconvenient information does he disclose? How much inconvenient information does he privately tolerate? I'm saying that when that tweet, and he told me, I didn't even ask him, that he told Kristof the guy didn't see the penetration. And now we know that, well, I think that's what he said. He definitely said that he told Kristof that he didn't know whether the guy wasn't sure whether he saw the penetration, but then he spilled to us that he didn't see the penetration. So we're going to presume that he told Kristof that he didn't see the penetration. And that you have to talk on the mic if you want to answer me. And from that, we learned something about Kristof's standards. Similarly, we certainly know that he knew that Rami Abdu said on October 8th that the violence that happened on October 7th was cinematic, that he was in awe of it. We know that on October 9th, Kristof must know that he was already calling it genocide 36 hours later. But instead, Kristof describes him as often critical of Israel. This tells us something about Kristof. And from that, we have every right to say, okay, now what am I to presume about these other stories that he's saying? I don't have access to them. All I have access to are these 2 tips of icebergs that tell me what he will and won't do. And I'm telling you, you follow me, I wouldn't do that. I'm extremely, almost too anal about making sure that I disclose anything that somebody might want to know or someone would accuse me of not sharing that kind of led them by the nose to a particular conclusion. And that is why, that's how I feel about it. If you want to answer, you're free to answer on the mic. If you want. You have to answer on the mic.
I'm happy to answer on the mic. I want to have veto power.
I will release it or not. No, if you don't want to talk on the mic, then we can just stop now and I'll release that. And if you want to be public release, you can talk on the mic.
No, I don't want to.
Or you can talk on the mic without showing your face. Whatever you want. I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm just saying, like, I'm being filmed now. So if you want to answer, no one's going to hear you. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk on the mic.
Okay. Okay, so don't keep the camera on me. You got to call on the mic over here. Okay. Yeah.
I will extremely happily stipulate.
You got him on camera, right? No, okay.
I'll extremely happily stipulate that Kristof's article was egregious in terms of how he handled evidence, what standards he held himself to, and any sort of self-awareness of what implications someone reading it would have about what the underlying truth is. That being said, there is a question of what we care about morally. I understand why you would take issue with unsubstantiated claims of anal dog penetration. To a neutral observer, that is maybe 5, maybe 15% of the badness that is being claimed about Israeli prisons. I don't know what is the above average baseline relative to the US system, relative to what you could imagine would be happening if all you knew is that Ben-Gvir was in charge and none of the other reports came out. We never had testimonies. We never had any direct evidence. We're trying to figure that out. We're trying to have like a basic moral calibration of what's going on. There were 2 people who were named in that story. One is basically a Hamas supporter, and the other is basically the Palestinian Gandhi, right? You could, if you wanted to, try to figure out what was true, right? You could have said, hey, those 2 people that you interviewed, how do we give them some sort of immunity? How do we try to figure out what's true? Say it's not necessarily on the record, but we need some, for Palestinians and Israelis to coexist, there needs to be some chain of trust. Maybe one person can't trust the other people, but there needs to be a link of 10 people. Because what's happening is there's this cycle of violence. People totally don't believe that anything is in response to anything else. And there's like a 90-10 filter, right? Where Israelis believe 10% of what they say is true, and Palestinians believe 10% of what they say is true. And regardless of what the denominator is, the truth is off by a factor less than 10, which means both societies look at the other society, say, it is impossible for us to have peace. There's crazy Kahanis or Hamas people who will literally kill me if I say something against the tribe. And because it's impossible for me to coordinate, I'm just going to shut up. I'm going to try to live my life, and I'm going to go through living a narrative where I'm the victim and nothing I can do possibly matters. If your goal is to like prevent the world from taking Kristof at face value, you can have that argument. You can make that case without yelling at anyone. I think that you could be more persuasive than you are. I could be wrong. Maybe
Okay.
you're.
I have only one thing to say. Can you tell Periel what a denominator is?
Fair enough.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. I'm gonna let you have the last word. Okay, Stephen.
How come you never let me have the last word?
Okay, I'm cutting.
And if you know, I think it's good that you.